In this video, we're breaking down Stranger Things Season 5 theories that are unsettling enough to keep your mind running long after you fall asleep. First up, we've got the theory that the Mind Flayer is the real villain of Stranger Things, not Vecna. Ever since Season 4 of Stranger Things revealed that Vecna was behind everything that happened in Hawkins, fans assumed the mystery was solved. Henry Creel, also known as One, also known as Vecna, was the mastermind pulling all the strings from the Upside Down. He was the one who opened the gates, controlled the monsters, and terrorized the town for years. Case closed, right? Not so fast. A massive theory has been gaining traction in the Stranger Things community, and it completely flips the script on everything we thought we knew. According to this theory, Vecna is not the main villain at all. The real villain, the one who has been orchestrating everything from the very beginning, is the Mind Flayer. And the evidence supporting this theory is so strong that it might just change how you see the entire show. Let's start with what we know from the show itself. In Season 2, Dustin Henderson does some research to figure out what the shadow monster is that has been haunting Will Byers. He pulls out his Dungeons & Dragons guidebook and identifies the creature as the Mind Flayer. But here's the important part. Dustin specifically says that the Mind Flayer is an ancient being, so old that it does not even know its true home. Think about that for a second. This thing has existed for so long that it has no memory of where it came from. That is not just old, that is ancient beyond comprehension. Dustin describes it as a being from an unknown dimension, something that predates everything else we have seen in the show. This detail is easy to miss on a first watch, but it sets up something huge. If the Mind Flayer is that ancient, then it has been around way longer than Henry Creel, way longer than Hawkins' lab, way longer than any of the human characters in the story. This immediately raises a question. If the Mind Flayer is that old and powerful, why would it need Vecna to do anything? Unless Vecna is not the one in control. Now, jump ahead to Season 4. In the 7th episode, Vecna reveals his backstory to Nancy Wheeler. He tells her that when Eleven banished him to the Upside Down back in 1979, he discovered this dark dimension filled with strange particles and creatures. According to Vecna, he found the Mind Flayer in its original form, just a mass of particles floating around without any real shape or purpose. He claims that he took those particles and shaped them into the giant spider-like form that we see in Seasons 2 and 3. He says he gave the Mind Flayer its purpose and direction. He makes it sound like he created the Mind Flayer as we know it, like it was just a tool he used to carry out his plans. This version of events makes Vecna sound like the ultimate villain. He found a bunch of random particles and turned them into a weapon of mass destruction. He is the architect of everything. But here is the problem. This version of events only comes from Vecna himself, and as we have learned throughout the show, Vecna is not exactly a reliable narrator. He lies, manipulates, and twists the truth to serve his own interests. So why should we believe him when he says he created the Mind Flayer? This is where things get really interesting. In 2024, Netflix released a stage play called Stranger Things: The First Shadow. This play is not just some random side project. It was written with direct involvement from the Duffer Brothers, the creators of Stranger Things. That means the information in the play is official canon. It is part of the actual Stranger Things story. And what the play reveals completely contradicts what Vecna told Nancy in Season 4. The First Shadow takes us back to 1959, when Henry Creel was just a young boy living with his family in Hawkins. At this point in his life, Henry is not evil. He is not a monster. He is just a kid dealing with some strange abilities that he does not fully understand. The play shows us what really happened to Henry, and it is not what Vecna claimed in Season 4. According to The First Shadow, young Henry Creel was accidentally transported to a place called Dimension X. This is not the Upside Down as we know it. Dimension X is described as a barren wasteland, a place filled with floating rocks and nothing else. It is basically a dead dimension. But while Henry is trapped in Dimension X, something finds him. The Mind Flayer finds him. And this is the key detail. The Mind Flayer already existed in Dimension X before Henry ever got there. It was not just a bunch of random particles waiting for someone to give it shape and purpose. It was already there, already aware, already powerful. And when it found young Henry, it did something to him. It corrupted him. It changed him. The play makes it clear that the Mind Flayer gave Henry his powers. Before his trip to Dimension X, Henry had some minor abilities, but nothing like what he would later become capable of. After his encounter with the Mind Flayer, everything changed. Henry came back different. He came back darker. he came back with powers that far exceeded anything a normal human should have. The Mind Flayer did not just give him abilities, it fundamentally altered who he was as a person. The play goes even further. It shows that when Henry returned from Dimension X, he was not fully in control of his own actions anymore. The Mind Flayer had gotten inside his head. It was influencing him, pushing him toward violence and destruction. This is why Henry killed his mother and sister in 1959. It was not because he was naturally evil. It was because the Mind Flayer was controlling him. The play depicts Henry as a victim, not a villain. He was a scared kid who stumbled into something he could not handle, and that thing took over his life. This completely changes the dynamic. If the first shadow is canon, and it is, then Vecna has been lying this whole time. He did not shape the Mind Flayer. The Mind Flayer shaped him. Vecna is not the mastermind. He is the puppet. Now, let's talk about what this means for the rest of the show. If the Mind Flayer has been controlling Vecna all along, then every single thing Vecna has done was actually the Mind Flayer's plan. When Vecna opened the first gate in 1983 by making contact with Eleven from the Upside Down, that was the Mind Flayer's doing. When the Demogorgon took Will Byers into the Upside Down in Season 1, that was the Mind Flayer's plan. When Will got possessed in Season 2, that was the Mind Flayer trying to establish a foothold in the real world. When the Mind Flayer built its flesh monster in Season 3 and tried to open the gate under Starcourt Mall, that was all part of its master plan. And when Vecna started killing teenagers in Season 4 to open multiple gates and merge Hawkins with the Upside Down, that was still the Mind Flayer pulling the strings. Vecna might think he is in control, but he is just another tool being used by something far more ancient and powerful. This theory also explains some weird inconsistencies in Season 4. Remember when Vecna told Nancy that he shaped the Mind Flayer and gave it purpose? That always felt a bit off. How could a human, even one with incredible powers, take control of an ancient being that has existed for thousands or millions of years? It never quite added up. But if we flip the script and assume Vecna is the one being controlled, suddenly everything makes sense. The Mind Flayer let Vecna think he was in charge because that made him a more effective servant. If Vecna believed he was the mastermind, he would carry out the Mind Flayer's plans with more confidence and determination. It is a classic manipulation tactic. Make your puppet think it is the puppeteer. There is also the matter of what the Mind Flayer actually wants. Throughout the show, the Mind Flayer has shown one consistent goal. It wants to consume everything. It wants to spread its influence across the entire world, turning every living thing into part of its hive mind. This is not about revenge or anger or any human emotion. This is about domination on a cosmic scale. The Mind Flayer does not care about Dr. Brenner or Hawkins' lab or any of the personal grudges that Vecna claims to have. Those are human concerns. The Mind Flayer is beyond that. It is an entity that exists solely to conquer and consume. Vecna, on the other hand, has very human motivations. He wants revenge on humanity for rejecting him. He wants to punish Dr. Brenner and everyone who wronged him. These are the motivations of someone who still thinks like a human, even if he looks like a monster. But if the Mind Flayer is the real villain, then Vecna's personal grudges are just a smokescreen. The Mind Flayer is using Vecna's anger and trauma as fuel to carry out its much larger plan. Let's also look at how the characters in the show have talked about this relationship. In Season 4, Dustin specifically refers to Vecna as the Mind Flayer's 5-star general. Think about what that means. A general is not the person in charge. A general takes orders from someone higher up. A general is a powerful figure, but they still serve a greater authority. Dustin is basically saying that Vecna is the Mind Flayer's top soldier, not its creator or master. This language is very deliberate. The Duffer Brothers do not throw in lines like that without a reason. They are telling us, through Dustin, that there is a hierarchy here, and Vecna is not at the top. Then there is Noah Schnapp's accidental reveal. During an episode of the Hot Ones interview show, Noah Schnapp, who plays Will Byers, was talking about the show with his castmates. In the middle of the conversation, he casually mentioned that the Mind Flayer is controlling Vecna. As soon as he said it, you could see his castmates react. They knew he had just dropped a massive spoiler. Noah tried to play it off, but the damage was done. He had confirmed what many fans already suspected. The Mind Flayer is the one in control. Now, some people might say that Noah just misspoke, or that he was confused about the plot. But Noah has been on this show since the very beginning. He knows the story inside and out, and the Duffer Brothers are very careful about what information the actors have access to. If Noah said the Mind Flayer is controlling Vecna, It is because that is what he was told by the people making the show. The Duffer Brothers themselves have also hinted at this. In an interview with Variety, they were asked directly whether Vecna or the Mind Flayer is the real villain of Stranger Things. Instead of giving a straight answer, Matt Duffer said that the question would be answered in the final episode of Season 5. He did not deny that there was a question to be answered. He did not say that Vecna was obviously the main villain, and that was the end of it. He said it was something that would be revealed in the finale. That means there is more to the story than what we have been told so far. The relationship between Vecna and the Mind Flayer is not as simple as Vecna being the master and the Mind Flayer being his weapon. There is a twist coming, and all signs point to that twist being that the Mind Flayer has been the true villain all along. Season 5, Volume 1 has already started laying the groundwork for this reveal. In the opening flashback, we see Vecna forcing something into Will Byers through a flesh vine back in 1983. Vecna tells the unconscious Will that they will do great things together. But notice the language. Vecna does not say he will do great things. He says they will do great things together. That suggests a partnership. Or, more accurately, a shared corruption. Vecna is infecting Will with the same thing that infected him. He is passing on the Mind Flayer's influence. This mirrors what happened to Henry Creel in The First Shadow. The Mind Flayer corrupted Henry, and now Henry, as Vecna, is spreading that corruption to others. It is a cycle. The Mind Flayer finds a host, corrupts them, and then uses them to spread its influence even further. We also see in Volume 1 that Vecna is terrified of the cave in his memories. When Max backs into the cave while exploring Henry's mindscape, Vecna refuses to follow her. He stays outside, visibly afraid. This cave is the same location shown in The First Shadow, the place where young Henry was first transported to Dimension X and encountered the Mind Flayer. Vecna is afraid of that cave because it represents the moment he lost control of his own life. It is a reminder that he is not the powerful god he pretends to be. He is a scared boy who made a mistake and has been paying for it ever since. The Mind Flayer took something from him in that cave, and he has never gotten it back. All of this evidence paints a very different picture from what Season 4 initially suggested. Vecna is not the architect of Hawkins' nightmares. He is a victim who became a villain because something much worse got inside his head and never let go. The Mind Flayer is the true threat. It has been the true threat since Season 2, maybe even since Season 1. Vecna is just the face it has been hiding behind. And in Season 5, when Eleven and the gang finally confront Vecna, they are going to realize that defeating him is not enough. They are going to have to face the real enemy, the ancient being that started all of this in the first place. The Mind Flayer has been playing the long game, and we are only just now beginning to see the full scope of its plan. This theory also adds a layer of tragedy to Vecna's character. If the Mind Flayer has been controlling him since childhood, then Henry Creel never really had a chance. He was doomed the moment he stepped into that cave. Everything he has done, all the pain he has caused, all the people he has killed, it was all because something else was pulling his strings. That does not excuse his actions, but it does reframe them. He is not a monster who chose evil. He is a monster who was created by something far more evil than he could ever be. And that makes the final confrontation in Season 5 even more interesting. Will Eleven have to kill Vecna to stop the Mind Flayer? Or will she have to find a way to free Henry from the Mind Flayer's control? Can Henry be redeemed? Or is he too far gone? These are questions the show will have to answer, and the answers will determine the fate of everyone in Hawkins. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the theory that Will Byers is Cass, and that he'll eventually turn against Vecna. Will Byers is Cass, and will turn against Vecna. The Stranger Things story began with Will Byers vanishing into the Upside Down on November 6, 1983. That disappearance set everything in motion. It brought Eleven into the lives of Mike, Dustin, and Lucas. It exposed Hawkins to the horrors of the alternate dimension. It changed the entire trajectory of the show. And now, after 5 seasons, many fans believe the story will end exactly where it started, with Will Byers. But not as a victim this time, as the key to defeating Vecna. The theory is simple, but powerful. Will Byers will become Cass the Bloody-Handed, the legendary character from Dungeons & Dragons who betrayed and ultimately defeated Vecna. And the evidence supporting this theory is built directly into the show itself, hidden in plain sight since the very first season. Let's start with the Dungeons & Dragons connection, because that is where this theory begins. Throughout Stranger Things, the kids have used their D&D campaigns to understand and predict what is happening in the real world. When the Demogorgon appeared in Season 1, they named it after the D&D monster because the parallels were obvious. When the shadow creature possessed Will in Season 2, Dustin identified it as the Mind Flayer by looking through the D&D guidebook. The show has always used the game as a narrative framework, dropping hints about what is coming next through the campaigns the boys play. So when fans started looking at the Vecna storyline through a D&D lens, they found something extremely interesting. In actual D&D lore, Vecna has a lieutenant named Koss the Bloody-Handed. Koss was Vecna's most trusted warrior, a vampire who wielded a powerful sword and fought by Vecna's side for years. But eventually, Koss betrayed Vecna. He turned against his master and struck him down, nearly killing him in an epic battle that destroyed them both. This D&D lore is not some obscure detail that hardcore fans dug up. The show itself directly references it. In Season 4, Episode 1, during the Hellfire Club campaign led by Eddie Munson, the players are discussing how to defeat Vecna in their game. One of the players protests and says that Vecna was already killed by Koss. Eddie acknowledges this and confirms that yes, in the game's lore, Koss killed Vecna. But then he reveals that Vecna has returned, more powerful than before, seeking revenge. This scene lasts only a few seconds, but it is packed with meaning. The Duffer Brothers do not include throwaway lines. Everything in Stranger Things is deliberate. If they took the time to specifically mention Koss killing Vecna in a D&D game, it is because they are foreshadowing what will happen in the real story. Someone in the show is going to play the role of Koss. Someone close to Vecna is going to betray him and strike the killing blow. The question is, who? For a long time, fans thought it would be Eddie Munson himself. Eddie was the dungeon master who told the story of Koss. Eddie died from Demobat bites, and in D&D lore, Koss was turned into a vampire after being attacked by bats. The parallels seemed perfect. Eddie would return from the dead as a vampire-like creature, torn between his loyalty to Dustin and his corruption by Vecna, and ultimately choose to betray Vecna and save his friends. It was a beautiful theory, and thousands of fans believed it with all their hearts. But then, the Duffer Brothers crushed those hopes. Matt Duffer said in an interview that Eddie is definitely dead. He said Eddie is fully under the ground and he is not coming back. Ross Duffer confirmed it as well, adding that Joseph Quinn, the actor who played Eddie, has been too busy filming movies to return for Season 5 anyway. The Eddie as Koss theory was officially dead. But that left a massive question. If Eddie is not Koss, then who is? The Koss storyline was set up too deliberately to just be abandoned. Someone has to fulfill that role. And when fans started looking at the other characters, one name kept coming up over and over again: Will Byers. Will makes perfect sense as Koss, and the evidence has been building since Season 1. First, consider the basic facts. Will was the first person Vecna ever took into the Upside Down. This happened in 1983, years before Vecna started killing teenagers in Season 4. At the time, the characters did not know it was Vecna who took Will. They thought it was just the Demogorgon. But Season 5, Volume 1 confirms what many fans already suspected. It was Vecna who orchestrated Will's kidnapping. The opening flashback of Season 5 shows us what happened to Will during his time in the Upside Down. Vecna captured him, pinned him down with fleshy vines, and forced something into his body through his mouth. It looked like Vecna was feeding Will a piece of the Upside Down itself, infecting him with the same corruption that runs through the entire dimension. While this was happening, Vecna spoke to the unconscious Will. He said, "You and I, we are going to do such beautiful things together." This was not a throwaway moment. This was Vecna marking Will. This was Vecna establishing a permanent connection between them, and that connection has defined Will's entire life ever since. In Season 2, we saw the consequences of that connection. Will started having visions of the Mind Flayer. He could see through the creature's eyes and sense when it was near. Eventually, the Mind Flayer fully possessed Will, using him as a spy to gather information about Hopper and the rest of the group. Joyce and Jonathan had to literally burn the Mind Flayer out of Will's body by heating him up until the creature could not stand it anymore and left. That should have been the end of it. The Mind Flayer was gone, and Will was free. But he was never truly free. In Season 3, Will started feeling the Mind Flayer's presence again. Whenever the Mind Flayer was active in Hawkins, Will could sense it. The back of his neck would tingle, like a warning system telling him danger was near. And in Season 4, after Vecna opened the gates and merged Hawkins with the Upside Down, Will's connection became even stronger. He could feel Vecna. He knew when Vecna was planning something. He was like a living radar system for the Upside Down. Season 5, Volume 1 takes this connection to a whole new level. Throughout the first 4 episodes, Will continues to sense Vecna's presence and the Upside Down's movements. But in the 4th episode, something changes. Will discovers that his connection to Vecna is not just a one-way street. He does not just receive information from Vecna, he can also tap into Vecna's power. The episode shows Will experiencing intense pain as the hive mind overwhelms him. He can see through the eyes of the creatures in the Upside Down. He can feel what they feel. And then, after a conversation with Robin Buckley about accepting himself for who he is, Will makes a choice. Instead of fighting the connection, he embraces it. He leans into the bond with Vecna and uses it to his advantage. In the final moments of the episode, when Demogorgons are attacking the military base and everyone is about to die, Will reaches out through the hive mind and takes control. He stops the Demogorgons mid-attack. He lifts them into the air, and then he kills them, using the exact same psychic crushing technique that Vecna uses to kill his victims. It is a stunning display of power, and it changes everything. The Duffer Brothers explained how this works in interviews after Volume 1 was released. They confirmed that Will does not have powers in the same way Eleven does. Eleven's powers come from within herself. She was born with that potential, and Dr. Brenner's experiments unlocked it. Will's powers are different. He is not generating the power himself, he is channeling it from Vecna. Because Vecna infected Will back in 1983, there is now a permanent link between them through the hive mind. Will can tap into that link and siphon off some of Vecna's power for himself. But there is a catch. Will's powers only work when he is physically close to Vecna. The Duffers said his abilities are completely proximity-based. The closer Will is to Vecna, the stronger the connection, and the more power Will can access. This is a critical detail because it means that Will's final confrontation with Vecna is inevitable. If Will is going to use his powers to their full extent, he has to be right there next to Vecna when the final battle happens. This is where the Cass parallel becomes impossible to ignore. In D&D lore, Cass was Vecna's right-hand man. He fought alongside Vecna. He was close to Vecna, trusted by Vecna, empowered by Vecna. And then, when the moment was right, Cass turned on him. Cass used the power and position Vecna had given him to strike a fatal blow. Will is in the exact same position. Vecna created this connection with Will back in 1983. Vecna gave Will access to the hive mind. Vecna empowered Will, whether he meant to or not. And now Will is going to use that power against him. The Season 5 trailer even shows Vecna confronting Will directly. Vecna tells him, "William, you are going to help me one last time." Vecna still thinks Will is his pawn. He still believes Will is under his control, but Will has proven in Volume 1 that he can resist Vecna's influence. He can take Vecna's power and use it for his own purposes. Vecna has underestimated Will, just like the D&D version of Vecna underestimated Cass. And that underestimation is going to be Vecna's downfall. The emotional weight of this theory makes it even more powerful. Will has been the victim of the Upside Down since the very first episode. He was the one who got taken. He was the one who got possessed. He was the one who suffered and struggled while everyone else got to be the heroes. Mike, Dustin, and Lucas saved the day in Season 1. Eleven closed the gate in Season 2. The whole group fought the Mind Flayer in Season 3. Eleven, Max, Steve, Nancy, and Robin took on Vecna in Season 4. But Will was always on the sidelines. He was always the one who needed saving. The show itself acknowledges this. In Season 2, Will says he wants to be a hero, not the one who needs to be rescued. He is tired of being weak. He is tired of being afraid. He wants to fight back. And now, finally, in Season 5, he gets his chance. Will is not a victim anymore. He is a weapon. And he is the only weapon that can truly hurt Vecna, because he is connected to Vecna in a way that no one else is. The Duffer Brothers have said repeatedly that Season 5 will bring the story full circle. They specifically mentioned that the story started with Will, and it will end with Will. Ross Duffer said in an interview that it felt very natural to recenter the story on Will in the final season because he was the kid who was taken in Season 1. The story has always been about him, even when it did not feel like it. Every gate that opened, every monster that attacked, every person who died, it all traces back to November 6th, 1983, when Vecna took Will into the Upside Down. That moment is the foundation of the entire series, and the series will not be complete until Will gets his moment of triumph, until he goes from being the boy who was kidnapped to being the man who saves everyone. The Cass theory gives Will that moment. It gives him a purpose that no other character can fulfill. Eleven is powerful, but she does not have the connection to Vecna that Will has. She cannot tap into the hive mind the way Will can. She is fighting Vecna from the outside. Will can fight him from the inside. There is also the question of what Vecna meant when he said Will would help him one last time. On the surface, This sounds like Vecna is planning to use Will as a pawn again, just like he did in Season 2. But the phrasing is interesting. One last time. Why would it be the last time? If Vecna truly had control over Will, why would he only need him once more? The answer is that Vecna does not have as much control as he thinks he does. Will has been resisting Vecna's influence for years. He fought off the Mind Flayer in Season 2. He learned to manage his connection in Seasons 3 and 4. And now, in Season 5, he is actively using that connection against Vecna. When Vecna says Will help him one last time, he is right, but not in the way he expects. Will is going to help end this. He is going to help destroy Vecna, and that will be the last time Vecna and Will ever interact, because one of them is not going to survive the encounter. The physical parallels between Will and Cass also line up. In D&D, Cass wielded a powerful sword. In Stranger Things, Will has always been associated with weapons and fighting. In Season 1, his character in the D&D campaign was a cleric, but he also used a fireball spell to destroy enemies. In Season 2, he drew pictures of the Mind Flayer and helped the group figure out how to hurt it. In Season 3, he was the one who realized the Mind Flayer was back. And now, in Season 5, he has a literal psychic weapon. He can kill monsters with his mind, using Vecna's own power against the Upside Down's forces. He has become the warrior the show always hinted he could be. The difference is that his sword is not made of steel. It is made of psychic energy, ripped directly from the hive mind itself. Some fans worry that if Will defeats Vecna, it will overshadow Eleven's role in the story. After all, Eleven has been the main hero since the beginning. She is the one with the powers. She is the one who has fought the big battles. It would feel wrong for her to be sidelined in the final confrontation, but the beauty of the Cass theory is that it does not require Eleven to step aside. In fact, it works best if Eleven and Will fight Vecna together. Eleven attacks from the outside, using her raw power to weaken Vecna. Will attacks from the inside, using his connection to the hive mind to disrupt Vecna's control over the Upside Down. Together, they are unstoppable. Eleven is the hammer, Will is the scalpel. Both are necessary to finish the job. This also ties into the Season 5 theory about the critical role. 11 is 11. Kali, who is confirmed to return in Volume 2, is 8. And Will, who is now channeling the power of Vecna, also known as 1, represents 1. 11 plus 8 plus 1 equals 20. In Dungeons & Dragons, rolling a natural 20 is the best possible outcome. It is a critical success. If the show is building toward a moment where 11, Kali, and Will combine their powers to deliver a final blow to Vecna, that would be the ultimate full circle ending. It would tie together every major character with psychic abilities into one devastating attack. The emotional arc for Will also makes this theory compelling. Will has struggled with his identity throughout the show. He has been treated differently because of his trauma. He has felt like an outsider, even among his closest friends. He has been hiding parts of himself, afraid of what people will think if he shows his true feelings. But in Season 5, Will is finally starting to accept who he is. His conversation with Robin in Volume 1 is a turning point. Robin, who is openly gay, talks to Will about the importance of accepting yourself and not letting fear control your life. She tells him that he is stronger than he thinks and that he does not have to be afraid anymore. Right after this conversation, Will taps into his powers for the first time. The implication is clear. Will's powers are tied to his self-acceptance. The more he embraces who he truly is, the more he can access the strength inside him. This is not just about defeating Vecna. This is about Will reclaiming his life. It is about him refusing to be a victim any longer. And when he finally stands up to Vecna and uses Vecna's own power to destroy him, it will be the ultimate act of defiance. It will prove that Vecna made a terrible mistake when he chose Will as his first victim, because that choice gave Will the tools to end him. The Cass theory has become one of the most widely accepted fan theories in the Stranger Things community. After the Duffer Brothers confirmed that Eddie Munson is dead and will not be returning, fans shifted their focus entirely to Will. The evidence is too strong to ignore. The D&D references, the connection established in 1983, the powers revealed in Volume 1, the Duffer Brothers saying the story ends with Will, all of it points in the same direction. Will Byers is Kaz. He is the one who will betray Vecna. He is the one who will strike the final blow. And when he does, it will be the most satisfying moment in the entire series, because it will prove that even the smallest, most vulnerable person can become a hero when they refuse to give up. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the theory that Vecna might actually be Eleven's biological father. Vecna is Eleven's biological father. One of the most shocking theories to emerge from Stranger Things Season 4 completely changes how we see the relationship between Eleven and Vecna. According to this theory, Henry Creel, also known as One, also known as Vecna, is not just Eleven's enemy, he is her biological father. This idea sounds wild at first, but when you look at the evidence from the show, from the official stage play, and from the supplementary novels, the pieces start to fit together in a way that is impossible to ignore. If this theory is true, then the final battle between Eleven and Vecna takes on a whole new level of emotional weight. It becomes more than just a fight between good and evil. It becomes a family tragedy, a daughter forced to destroy her own father to save the world. Let's start with what we know for certain about Eleven's origins. Eleven was born in 1971 to a woman named Terry Ives. Terry was a college student who volunteered for government experiments being conducted by Dr. Martin Brenner at Hawkins National Laboratory. Terry thought she was participating in tests related to expanded consciousness and psychic abilities. What she did not know was that Brenner had a much darker purpose. He was trying to create children with supernatural powers, specifically telekinetic and telepathic abilities like the ones Henry Creel possessed. Brenner had been studying Henry since 1959, when Henry killed his mother and sister using his psychic powers and fell into a coma. Brenner took custody of Henry, made him subject number 1, and spent years trying to understand and replicate his abilities. But Brenner's attempts to create other powered children through traditional experiments failed. The abilities would not transfer through normal scientific methods, so Brenner had to get creative. This is where the stage play, Stranger Things: The First Shadow, becomes critically important. The First Shadow is not fan fiction or a spin-off with questionable canon status. It was written with direct involvement from Matt and Ross Duffer, the creators of Stranger Things, and it provides official backstory for the show. In The First Shadow, we learn that Dr. Brenner conducted experiments involving Henry Creel's blood. Specifically, Brenner performed blood transfusions on pregnant women, transferring Henry's blood into their bodies while they were carrying their babies. The idea was that Henry's blood contained whatever genetic or supernatural component gave him his powers, and if Brenner could introduce that blood into developing fetuses, those children might be born with similar abilities. This was Brenner's breakthrough. He could not create powers from nothing, but he could use Henry as the source and spread those powers to other children through blood manipulation. The play establishes this as fact. Brenner used Henry's blood to create the numbered children at Hawkins' lab. This is how all the kids with powers came to exist. They were not random children who happened to have abilities. They were the result of a deliberate process involving Henry Creel's DNA. Now, the play does not explicitly state that this made Henry the biological father of these children. The women were already pregnant when Brenner performed the transfusions. They had biological fathers through normal conception. But here is where things get complicated. If Henry's blood fundamentally altered the DNA of these developing children, giving them abilities they would not have had otherwise, then in a genetic sense, Henry contributed to what they became. His genetic material became part of them. This is especially true for Eleven, who is far more powerful than any of the other numbered children. While most of the kids at the lab had minor abilities, Eleven's powers were off the charts. She could move objects with her mind, see across vast distances, enter people's memories, and eventually even bring people back from the brink of death. She was in a completely different category. The question is, why? Why was Eleven so much stronger than the others? One possible answer is that Brenner did something different with Terry Ives. Maybe the blood transfusion process was more intensive. Maybe Terry received more of Henry's blood than the other mothers. Or maybe, and this is where the theory gets really interesting, maybe Henry's involvement with Eleven went beyond just a blood transfusion. Maybe Henry himself contributed genetic material in a more direct way. The theory suggests that Dr. Brenner, frustrated by his inability to create a perfect replica of Henry's powers, decided to use Henry as an actual sperm donor. Brenner would have had complete control over Henry at the lab. Henry was subject number 1, essentially a prisoner being studied and experimented on. If Brenner wanted to use Henry's genetic material to artificially inseminate Terry Ives, Henry would not have been able to stop him. Terry might not have even known it was happening. Brenner could have told her it was just another part of the experiment, and if this happened, then Eleven would not just have some of Henry's blood in her system, she would be his biological daughter in the truest sense. There is a specific scene in Season 4 that fans point to as evidence for this theory. In Episode 7, when Eleven is reliving her memories inside the Nina Project, we see a flashback to her birth. Terry Ives is in a hospital room, in labor, screaming in pain. Dr. Brenner is there, standing over her, watching with cold detachment. And then, for just a brief moment, the camera shows another figure in the room. It is a man, standing in the shadows, partially obscured. We do not see his face clearly. The shot is very quick, but some fans believe that man is Henry Creel. In 1971, Henry would have been around 24 years old, already a young adult. He had been at the lab for over a decade at that point, under Brenner's control the entire time. If Brenner brought Henry into the delivery room to witness Eleven's birth, it could have been for a very specific reason, because Eleven was Henry's daughter. Brenner might have wanted Henry to see the result of their experiment, to see the child that carried his genetic legacy. Now, the show does not confirm this outright. The figure in the shadows is never identified. It could be a doctor or a nurse or just a random lab assistant. But the fact that the Duffer Brothers chose to include that shot at all is significant. They could have shown Terry giving birth without any mysterious figures in the room. They chose to add that detail. And in a show as carefully constructed as Stranger Things, details like that are never accidental. The other piece of evidence from Season 4 comes from the way Henry interacts with Eleven in the flashbacks. When Henry is disguised as an orderly at the lab, he takes a special interest in Eleven. He watches her. He helps her. He teaches her how to access her powers in a way that no one else could. At one point, Henry tells Eleven that she reminds him of himself when he was younger. He says they are alike. He says they are both different from everyone else, both misunderstood, both more powerful than the people around them realize. This could just be manipulation. Henry was trying to turn Eleven against Brenner and convince her to join him in his plan to destroy the lab. But there is a deeper layer to his words. What if Henry saw himself in Eleven because she literally came from him? What if the reason she reminded him of his younger self was because she had his DNA, his abilities, his potential? Henry also knew exactly how to unlock Eleven's powers. When Eleven was struggling to access her abilities, lost and confused and convinced she was powerless, Henry was the one who figured out how to help her. He understood her mind in a way that Brenner never did. He knew what memories she needed to tap into, what emotions she needed to feel, what mental state would allow her powers to flow freely. How did he know all of this? One explanation is that Henry had spent years being experimented on and had learned a lot about how psychic powers work. But another explanation is that Henry understood Eleven's powers because they were the same powers he had. Not just similar powers, the exact same powers, passed down from father to daughter through genetics. This would explain why Eleven is so much stronger than the other children. She did not just get a blood transfusion like the others. She got the full genetic package directly from Henry himself. There is also the novel Stranger Things: Suspicious Minds, which provides more backstory for Terry Ives and the experiments at Hawkins' lab. In the book, it is mentioned that Terry had a boyfriend named Andrew Rich, who was supposedly Eleven's father. According to the story, Brenner had Andrew drafted and sent to Vietnam, where he was killed in action before he ever learned Terry was pregnant. This has always been the official explanation for who Eleven's father was: a normal man named Andrew Rich, now dead, leaving Terry to raise the baby alone until Brenner stole Eleven away. But here is the problem. Everything we know about Dr. Brenner tells us he is a liar. He manipulated everyone around him. He told the numbered children that he was their papa, their father figure, when in reality he was their captor and abuser. He told Terry that her baby died during childbirth, when in reality he stole Eleven and raised her in the lab. Brenner lied about everything. So why would we believe the story about Andrew Rich? It is entirely possible that Brenner made up the whole thing. Maybe Andrew Rich never existed. Or maybe he did exist, but he was not actually Eleven's biological father. Maybe Brenner used Terry's relationship with Andrew as a cover story, a convenient explanation for Terry's pregnancy that hid the truth about what Brenner had actually done. In Season 4, when Henry is still pretending to be a helpful orderly, he tells Eleven something very important. He says, "Papa does not always tell the truth." This line is clearly meant to make Eleven question Brenner, but it also plants a seed in the audience's mind. If Brenner does not always tell the truth, then what else has he lied about? What other secrets is he hiding? The story about Eleven's father being a random college student who died in Vietnam is exactly the kind of simple, sad story that Brenner would fabricate to avoid more complicated questions. If people believed Eleven's father was dead, they would never go looking for him. They would never discover the truth about what Brenner did to create her. But if Eleven's real father is Henry Creel, then Brenner has been hiding the biggest secret of all. He created a child using his most dangerous subject's DNA. He brought Vecna's daughter into the world and raised her to be a weapon. And now, that weapon is the only thing standing between Vecna and the destruction of humanity. The emotional implications of this theory are staggering. If Vecna is Eleven's father, then every interaction they have had takes on new meaning. In Season 4, when Eleven finally remembers the massacre at Hawkins' lab and realizes that Henry was the one who killed all the other children, she is horrified. She rejects him completely. She refuses his offer to join him and remake the world together. And when he tries to kill her, she fights back with everything she has and banishes him to the Upside Down. That moment is already powerful in the show, but if Henry is her father, it becomes 1,000 times more tragic. Eleven is not just rejecting a dangerous man, she is rejecting her own father. She is choosing to destroy the person whose blood runs through her veins because she knows it is the right thing to do. That is the ultimate heroic choice. To put the safety of the world above family. To recognize that blood relation does not excuse evil. To understand that sometimes the people who gave us life can also be the people we have to stop. This would also create a direct parallel to one of the most famous storylines in pop culture history, Star Wars. In The Empire Strikes Back, Luke Skywalker discovers that Darth Vader, the villain he has been fighting, is actually his father. This revelation changes everything. It complicates the conflict. It makes the final confrontation in Return of the Jedi about more than just good versus evil. It becomes about redemption, about whether Vader can be saved, about whether the love between father and son is strong enough to overcome the darkness. Stranger Things has always drawn inspiration from 1980s pop culture, and Star Wars is one of the biggest influences on the Duffer Brothers. If they wanted to create their own version of the Vader reveal, having Vecna be Eleven's father would be the perfect way to do it. The emotional beats would line up perfectly. Eleven would have to grapple with the knowledge that the monster she has been fighting shares her DNA. She would have to decide whether Vecna can be redeemed or if he is too far gone. And in the end, she would have to make the same choice Luke made, to try and save her father or to destroy him if salvation is impossible. Dr. Brenner's obsession with Eleven also makes more sense if she is Henry's biological daughter. Throughout the show, Brenner treats Eleven differently than the other children. He calls himself her papa. He puts more time and energy into training her than anyone else. He is devastated when she escapes in Season 1, and he spends years trying to find her and bring her back. Even in Season 4, when Brenner is supposedly helping Eleven regain her powers so she can fight Vecna, it is clear that he cares about her in a way that goes beyond scientific interest. Some fans have theorized that Brenner sees himself as Eleven's real father, that his obsession with her is paternal in a twisted way. But what if Brenner's attachment to Eleven comes from the fact that she is the product of his greatest experiment? If Brenner used Henry's DNA to create Eleven, then she represents the culmination of everything Brenner worked for. She is proof that Brenner succeeded. She is the perfect combination of Henry's raw power and Brenner's scientific manipulation. Brenner does not love Eleven as a daughter. He loves her as a creation, as his masterpiece. This would also explain why Eleven is the only one who can truly fight Vecna on equal footing. In Season 4, when Eleven enters Max's mind to battle Vecna, she is able to hold her own against him. She is not stronger than him, at least not yet, but she is close. She has the same fundamental abilities. She can enter minds, manipulate reality, and unleash devastating psychic attacks. The other children at the lab could not do these things. Even Kali, number 8, who can create illusions, does not have the same kind of raw power that Eleven and Vecna possess. If Eleven's power comes directly from Vecna's DNA, then it makes sense that she would be the only one capable of matching him. She is not just another experiment, she is his genetic equal. She is, in every sense that matters, his successor. And that is exactly what Vecna feared. When he killed all the children at the lab in 1979, he did it because he saw them as inferior copies of himself. He did not want competition. He did not want anyone else with powers to challenge his dominance. But he spared Eleven. He invited her to join him, He saw something in her that he did not see in the others. Maybe what he saw was himself. Maybe, on some subconscious level, Henry recognized Eleven as his own flesh and blood. And when she rejected him, it was not just a betrayal, it was the ultimate rejection. His own daughter choosing humanity over him. The theory also ties into the themes of nature versus nurture that run throughout Stranger Things. If Eleven is Vecna's biological daughter, then she carries his DNA, his genetic predisposition toward power and potentially toward violence. But unlike Henry, Eleven was not raised in isolation. She was not tormented by visions of darkness and corrupted by the Mind Flayer. She found friends, she found love, she found a family in Hopper, Joyce, and the boys. Despite sharing Vecna's blood, Eleven became a hero because of the people who surrounded her and the choices she made. This sends a powerful message. You are not defined by where you come from. You are not doomed to repeat the mistakes of your parents. You can choose to be better. Eleven is proof that even if you have darkness in your DNA, you can still choose the light. And in the final battle, that choice will define her. She will have to face her father, knowing that she could have ended up just like him if her life had gone differently. And she will have to prove that she is stronger than her bloodline. Some fans worry that this twist would feel too much like a soap opera, too melodramatic for a show like Stranger Things. But the Duffer Brothers have never shied away from big emotional swings. They killed Bob in Season 2, they killed Billy in Season 3, they killed Eddie in Season 4. They are not afraid to break hearts. And a father-daughter confrontation between Eleven and Vecna would be the most heartbreaking moment in the entire series. It would force Eleven to confront the question that has haunted her since Season 1. Who is she? Is she a monster like the lab tried to make her? Or is she a hero like her friends believe? If Vecna is her father, then that question becomes even more urgent. Does she have his evil inside her? Will she eventually turn into him? Or can she prove, once and for all, that she is her own person, capable of making her own choices, regardless of whose blood flows through her veins? The final battle will not just be about defeating Vecna, it will be about Eleven defeating the idea that she is destined to be like him. The theory that Vecna is Eleven's father has been circulating since Season 4 aired in 2022, and it has only grown more popular as more evidence has emerged. The first shadow play confirmed that Brenner used Henry's blood in his experiments. Season 5, Volume 1 showed the deep connection between Eleven and the lab's origins. And the Duffer Brothers have promised that Season 5 will reveal major secrets about Eleven's past and the true nature of Hawkins' lab. All of this points toward a massive reveal. And if that reveal is that Vecna and Eleven are father and daughter, it will recontextualize the entire series. Every time they fought, every time they spoke, every moment of connection and rejection between them, it was all happening between family members who did not know the truth. And when Eleven finally learns that truth, it will either destroy her or make her stronger than she has ever been. The choice will be hers. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the theory that Steve Harrington will die saving Dustin. Steve Harrington has gone through one of the most remarkable character transformations in television history. He started as the stereotypical popular jock, the guy everyone expected to be a villain. He was dating Nancy Wheeler. He had the perfect hair, he threw parties, and he looked down on people like Jonathan Byers. By all rights, Steve should have been a one-season character, a bad boyfriend who got what he deserved and disappeared from the story. But something unexpected happened. Joe Keery brought so much charm and depth to the role that the Duffer Brothers fell in love with the character. They kept him alive, they gave him a redemption arc, and over 4 seasons, Steve transformed from Hawkins High's biggest jerk into the group's most beloved protector. He became the babysitter, the big brother, the guy who would throw himself in front of danger without a second thought to keep his friends safe. And now, as Stranger Things enters its final season, fans are terrified that Steve's story is about to end in the most heartbreaking way possible. With a heroic death saving Dustin Henderson, the evidence for this theory starts with the most obvious clue. Steve is barely in the Season 5 promotional material. When Netflix released the first teaser trailer for Season 5 back in the summer, fans immediately noticed something strange. Steve appeared for maybe a few seconds total. There was a quick shot of him driving his car with some kind of antenna attached to the roof. There was a brief glimpse of him turning a wheel that seemed to control radio equipment outside the Hawkins radio station. And that was it. For a character who has been front and center since Season 2, this was shocking. The October trailer showed a little more of Steve, including a moment where he hugs Dustin. But compared to the screen time given to other characters, Steve felt almost invisible. In a show as carefully marketed as Stranger Things, This absence is not an accident. The Duffer Brothers know exactly what they are doing when they release trailers. They know which characters to highlight and which to hide. And when a major character suddenly disappears from the marketing, it usually means one of two things. Either that character is going to have a massive plot twist that the creators do not want to spoil, or that character is going to die. The Duffer Brothers themselves have added fuel to this theory with their comments about Season 5. In multiple interviews leading up to the season's release, Matt and Ross Duffer talked about how brutal the final season would be. Ross told Entertainment Weekly that it is a brutal season, more violent than what came before, with higher stakes than ever. Matt added that a lot more is on the table because they are hurtling toward the end. But the most important comment came when they were asked about character deaths. The Duffers said they try to be very careful about when and how frequently they kill characters. They said that if there is a death, it has to have real repercussions. It has to matter. It cannot just be for shock value. Every death in Stranger Things has to be earned. This philosophy has guided the show from the beginning. When Bob Newby died in Season 2, it devastated Joyce and gave Hopper a reason to step up as a father figure for Will and Jonathan. When Billy Hargrove died in Season 3, it completed his redemption arc and gave Max years of trauma to work through. When Eddie Munson died in Season 4, it broke Dustin's heart and showed the ultimate cost of heroism. Every death served the story. So if the Duffers are promising that Season 5 deaths will be earned and meaningful, fans have been trying to figure out which character's death would have the biggest emotional impact. And for many people, the answer is Steve. Steve's relationship with Dustin Henderson is the emotional core of his character arc. When Steve and Dustin first teamed up in Season 2, it seemed like an odd pairing. Steve was the cool high school graduate trying to figure out his life. Dustin was the nerdy middle schooler obsessed with Dungeons and Dragons and science. They should not have worked as friends, but they did. Their friendship started with something simple. Steve gave Dustin hair advice, teaching him the secret to his perfect hairstyle. It was a small moment, a throwaway joke, but it became the foundation of something deeper. Steve saw potential in Dustin. He saw a kid who was smart and brave and loyal, a kid who reminded Steve of the person he wanted to be. And Dustin saw someone who treated him like an equal, not like a little kid to be protected or dismissed. Their bond grew stronger through Seasons 2, 3, and 4. They fought demodogs together. They infiltrated a secret Russian base together. They navigated the Upside Down together. By Season 4, they were not just friends, they were family. Dustin looked up to Steve like a big brother, and Steve would have died for Dustin without hesitation, which is exactly what makes the theory so terrifying. Season 5, Volume 1 shows that Steve and Dustin are fighting. For the first time in their friendship, there is real tension between them. Dustin is still grieving Eddie Munson, the Hellfire Club leader who sacrificed himself at the end of Season 4 to give the group a chance to escape the Upside Down. Dustin has been wearing Eddie's Hellfire shirt as a tribute. He has been picking fights with jocks at school. He has been acting reckless, putting himself in danger, and his friends are worried about him. Steve, who has always been protective of Dustin, tries to talk to him about it, but Dustin does not want to hear it. He pushes Steve away. He tells him he does not understand. The conversation escalates into an argument, and by the end of Volume 1, their relationship is strained in a way it has never been before. For fans who love Steve and Dustin's friendship, this is painful to watch. But it is also narratively significant, because when writers create conflict between two characters who are normally close, it usually means they are setting up a reconciliation. And in a show like Stranger Things, reconciliations often come right before tragedy. The pattern is clear if you look at previous seasons. In Season 4, Eddie and Dustin bonded over music and Dungeons and Dragons. They became close friends in a very short amount of time. And then, in the final episodes, Eddie sacrificed himself to save Dustin and the rest of the group. His death was devastating because we had just watched their friendship blossom. The same pattern is being set up with Steve and Dustin in Season 5. The fight in Volume 1 creates distance between them, but in Volume 2, or the finale, that distance will be resolved. Steve and Dustin will reconcile. They will have a moment where they remember why they matter to each other. They will hug, like they do in the trailer. And then, when the final battle comes, Steve will make the same choice Eddie made. He will put himself in harm's way to protect Dustin, and this time, he will not survive. There is also the matter of set leaks and behind-the-scenes information that has fueled this theory. Several reports from people who claim to have insider knowledge about Season 5 mentioned a scene where Will Byers is screaming for Steve to run. The context of this scene was not clear, but the implication was obvious. Steve is in danger. something is chasing him or attacking him, and Will can see it happening. Will is yelling at Steve to get away, to escape, to save himself. But if the theory is correct, Steve does not run. He stays and fights whatever is coming for him, buying time for the others to get to safety. This would be completely in character for Steve. He has never been the type to run from danger, especially when his friends are at risk. In Season 1, he came back to fight the Demogorgon even though he had every reason to leave. In Season 2, he grabbed a baseball bat covered in nails and went into the tunnels to face a pack of Demodogs. In Season 3, he let Russian soldiers beat him to a pulp rather than give up information that could hurt his friends. In Season 4, he dove into the Upside Down without hesitation to save Nancy. Running is not in Steve's DNA. If something is threatening Dustin or the group, Steve will stand his ground, even if it kills him. The comparison to Eddie's death is unavoidable. Eddie died fighting Demobats to give Dustin time to escape. It was a heroic moment, a sacrifice that saved lives, but it also traumatized Dustin in ways that are still playing out in Season 5. If Steve dies in a similar way, protecting Dustin from some upside-down creature, the emotional impact on Dustin would be catastrophic. Dustin has already lost one older brother figure. Losing a second one, especially Steve, who has been there since Season 2, would break him completely. Some fans argue that this makes Steve's death unlikely. The Duffer Brothers would not want to put Dustin through that pain twice. They would not want to repeat the same story beat from Season 4. But other fans argue the opposite. They say that repeating the beat is exactly the point. The tragedy of Stranger Things is that the cost of fighting the Upside Down keeps getting higher. People keep dying, heroes keep sacrificing themselves, and the survivors have to carry that weight. If Dustin loses both Eddie and Steve, it hammers home the brutal reality of their situation. This is not a story where everyone gets a happy ending. Some people do not make it, and the ones who do have to live with the scars. Steve's redemption arc also feels complete, which is often a sign that a character is about to die. When Steve was introduced in Season 1, he was selfish and shallow. He cared more about his reputation than about the people around him. But over the course of the series, Steve has become the opposite of who he used to be. He is selfless, he is brave, he is kind. He takes care of the kids even though he does not have to. He risks his life again and again with no expectation of reward or recognition. He has grown into the kind of person who would make the ultimate sacrifice without hesitation. His arc is about learning to put others first. And the natural conclusion of that arc is a moment where he gives everything he has, including his life, to save someone he loves. Dustin is the person Steve cares about most. Dustin represents everything Steve has become. So if Steve is going to die, dying for Dustin would be the perfect ending to his story. It would show that Steve's transformation is complete. He is no longer the guy who ran away when things got hard. He is the guy who stays and fights, no matter the cost. Joe Keery's comments about Steve have also added weight to the theory. In multiple interviews over the years, Keery has said that Steve was never supposed to last as long as he did. The Duffer Brothers originally planned to kill Steve in Season 1. He was written as a typical 1980s movie villain, the douchebag boyfriend who gets what he deserves. But Keery's performance changed their minds. They fell in love with his charisma and decided to give Steve a second chance. Matt Duffer said in an interview with Entertainment Weekly that if they had not liked Joe Keery as a person and as an actor, Steve would have been gone. This means that Steve has been living on borrowed time since the very beginning. Every season he survives is a gift, and now that the show is ending, the Duffers might finally follow through on their original plan. They might give Steve the hero's death they had always intended for him, just delayed by 4 seasons. However, there is one major piece of evidence that argues against Steve's death. Joe Keery himself has said he is very happy with how Steve's story ends. In a recent interview, Keery was asked about Steve's fate in Season 5. He said he was very happy with the way it wrapped up for him personally, and when asked if fans would feel the same way, he said absolutely they are going to like it. This does not sound like someone talking about a tragic death. When actors talk about their character dying, they usually use words like bittersweet, or emotional, or heartbreaking. They do not usually say they are happy and that fans are going to like it. So either Keery is being deliberately misleading to protect the twist, or Steve actually does survive. This has split the fandom. Some fans take Keery's words at face value and believe Steve will make it to the end. Other fans think Keery is lying on purpose because the Duffers do not want the death spoiled before it happens. There is also the question of whether Steve's death would actually serve the story. The Duffers said deaths have to be earned and meaningful. Would Steve dying for Dustin be meaningful, or would it just be repeating what Eddie already did? Some fans argue that Steve's death would feel redundant. Eddie's sacrifice already showed the cost of heroism. Doing the same thing again with Steve would not add anything new. It would just be sad for the sake of being sad. Other fans counter that Steve's death would be different because Steve has been with us since the beginning. We have watched him grow and change over 5 seasons. His death would hurt more than Eddie's because we have spent more time with him. It would show that even the characters who have been there from the start are not safe. No one is protected by plot armor. Anyone can die. The love triangle between Steve, Nancy, and Jonathan also factors into this theory. Throughout the series, Steve has been stuck in an awkward position. He still has feelings for Nancy, but Nancy is with Jonathan. In Season 4, there were hints that Nancy might still have feelings for Steve too, which created tension. But that tension was never fully resolved. If Steve dies in Season 5, it would end the love triangle permanently. Nancy would not have to choose between Steve and Jonathan because Steve would be gone. This would free Nancy to focus on Jonathan without guilt or regret, and it would give Steve's death an additional layer of tragedy. He would die without ever getting the girl back, without ever finding the romantic relationship he has been searching for. His reward for becoming a better person would not be happiness, it would be a heroic death. That is a dark ending, but it fits the tone of Stranger Things, where being a good person does not guarantee you a good life. Steve's role in Season 5, Volume 1 has been relatively minor, which also supports the death theory. He does not have any major plot developments. He is not connected to the main mysteries. He is mostly helping with logistics, setting up radio equipment, driving people around, being supportive. He is not essential to defeating Vecna in the way that Eleven, Will, or even Dustin are. From a storytelling perspective, this makes Steve expendable. His death would not derail the mission. The group could still defeat Vecna without him, but his death would provide emotional weight. It would remind the audience that this is the final battle and that the cost is real. Someone important has to die to make the victory feel earned, and Steve fits that role perfectly. He is beloved enough that his death would hurt, but not so central to the plot that his absence would create story problems. Fans have pointed out that Steve is similar to Daryl Dixon from The Walking Dead. Daryl was a fan-favorite character who survived season after season because the audience loved him so much. The writers kept him alive because they knew killing him would devastate the fan base. But eventually, the narrative demands of the story might outweigh fan love. Steve has reached that point. He has survived 4 seasons through sheer popularity, but Season 5 is the end. There is no Season 6 to worry about. The Duffers do not have to keep Steve alive to maintain viewership. They can make the choice that serves the story best, even if it breaks hearts. And the story might demand that Steve Harrington, the babysitter, the hero, the guy with the perfect hair, goes out the way all great heroes do, fighting to the very end to protect the people he loves. Whether Steve Harrington lives or dies will be revealed when Stranger Things Season 5, Volume 2 drops on Christmas Day and the finale airs on New Year's Eve. Until then, fans are caught between hope and dread, knowing that the show they love has never been afraid to make them cry. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Next up, the theory that the 12 kidnapped kids are actually part of Vecna's growing army or cult. The 12 kidnapped kids are Vecna's army cult. When Stranger Things Season 5 Volume 1 began, one of the most disturbing developments was the sudden disappearance of 12 children from Hawkins. These were not random accidents or isolated incidents. These were coordinated abductions carried out by Vecna himself, and they happened almost simultaneously across the town. Among the missing children was Holly Wheeler, Nancy and Mike's younger sister, which brought the horror directly into the lives of our main characters. The question that haunted everyone watching was simple but terrifying. What does Vecna want with these kids? Why specifically 12? And what is he planning to do with them? The answer, according to one of the most widely accepted fan theories, is far worse than anyone initially imagined. Vecna is not just kidnapping these children to kill them or torture them, he is building an army. More specifically, he is creating the Cult of Vecna, a group of broken, reshaped vessels who will help him tear open the fabric of reality itself and allow the Upside Down to consume the entire world. The foundation for this theory was actually laid in Season 4, long before any of the Season 5 kidnappings happened. In the very first episode of Season 4, Eddie Munson runs a Dungeons & Dragons campaign for the Hellfire Club at Hawkins High School. During this campaign, Eddie describes the adventure that the players are on. He talks about Vecna, the powerful lich who rules over death and darkness. But Eddie does not just mention Vecna as a lone villain. He specifically references the cult of Vecna. In Dungeons & Dragons lore, Vecna does not work alone. He has followers. worshippers, people who have been twisted by his influence and who serve his dark purposes. These cultists are fanatically loyal to Vecna, carrying out his will and spreading his corruption wherever they go. The cult of Vecna is a core part of the character's mythology in the game, so when Eddie mentioned it in his campaign, it seemed like just a fun reference to the source material. But the Duffer Brothers never include details in their D&D scenes by accident. Every monster name, every spell, every story element from the game ends up reflecting something that happens in the real world of Stranger Things. The Demogorgon in Season 1, the Mind Flayer in Season 2, Vecna himself in Season 4. So when Eddie talked about the cult of Vecna, he was not just running a game, he was foreshadowing what was coming in Season 5. Volume 1 of Season 5 makes this connection explicit. We learn that Vecna has been planning something massive, something that requires more than just his own power. On November 6, 1986, exactly 3 years after Will Byers first disappeared into the Upside Down, Vecna springs his trap. 12 children across Hawkins suddenly vanish. They are lured away from safety, pulled into the Upside Down through mental manipulation and psychic control. Holly Wheeler is among them, grabbed while the chaos of a Demogorgon attack distracted everyone else. These children are not killed immediately like Vecna's previous victims. Instead, they are taken to a specific location in the Upside Down, a place that Will Byers later draws in a picture. Will's drawing shows a massive structure, almost like a web or a network, with 12 points radiating out from a central location. Each point represents one of the kidnapped children, and at the center, controlling everything, is Vecna. This is not just a prison, this is a psychic battery farm. Vecna has placed these children into a shared mental space, a nightmare realm where he can break them down, reshape their minds, and turn them into extensions of his will. When Max Mayfield wakes up inside this nightmare in Volume 1, we get our first real glimpse of what Vecna is doing to these kids. Max has been trapped in Vecna's mind palace since the end of Season 4, when she died and was brought back, but her consciousness remains stuck in the Upside Down. In Volume 1, Max meets Holly Wheeler, who has just been taken. Holly is terrified and confused. She does not understand where she is or why she is there. Vecna appears to her in the form of a friendly presence at first, disguised as her imaginary friend from childhood. He tells Holly that she can leave the house they are in, but she must not go into the woods. He tells her there are monsters out there, and that she will be safe as long as she stays where he tells her to stay. This is classic manipulation. Vecna is establishing control over Holly by pretending to protect her while actually imprisoning her. He is using her fear and confusion to make her dependent on him, and he is doing this to all 12 children at the same time, breaking down their sense of self and replacing it with obedience to him. But Vecna is not just trying to control these kids for the sake of having servants. He has a specific purpose for them, and that purpose is connected to the most fundamental rule of how the Upside Down works. Throughout Stranger Things, we have learned that the Upside Down is connected to our world through gates, or portals, that tear open in moments of extreme psychic trauma. Eleven opened the very first gate in 1983 when she made psychic contact with the Demogorgon while in a vulnerable, terrified state. Vecna has been opening gates by killing people in Season 4, using their fear and pain in their final moments to rip holes between dimensions. Every time Vecna kills someone using his curse, a new gate opens at the location where they died. This is how he opened 4 gates in Hawkins and created the massive rift that merged the town with the Upside Down at the end of Season 4. But here is the problem from Vecna's perspective. Those gates are all in Hawkins. They are concentrated in one small town in Indiana. If Vecna wants to bring the Upside Down to the entire world, he needs gates everywhere. He needs portals opening in every major city, in every country, across every continent. And to do that, he needs more than just his own power. He needs vessels. He needs people whose trauma and fear he can weaponize on a massive scale. This is where the 12 children come in. Vecna tells Holly directly that he plans to break, reshape, and take control of these kids. He is not just going to kill them, he is going to fundamentally alter who they are. He is going to shatter their minds, rebuild them in his image, and turn them into living conduits for the Upside Down's power. Once he has completed this process, each of these 12 children will be capable of opening a gate just like Vecna can. But unlike Vecna, who can only be in one place at a time, these children can be sent anywhere. Vecna can use them to open gates across the entire world simultaneously. Imagine 12 gates opening at the same time in 12 different locations: New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Los Angeles, Paris. Each gate becomes a foothold for the Upside Down. Each gate allows Demogorgons, Demobats, and other creatures to pour through into our world, and each gate weakens the barrier between dimensions a little bit more, making it easier for the Mind Flayer itself to cross over. This is Vecna's endgame. Not just to destroy Hawkins, but to bring the entire planet under the control of the Upside Down. The science behind this plan was actually explained in Volume 1, though it is easy to miss if you are not paying close attention. Mr. Clark, the science teacher, who has been helping the kids understand the Upside Down since Season 1, gives a lecture to his class about wormholes. He draws a diagram on the chalkboard, showing how an Einstein-Rosen bridge works. A wormhole is essentially a tunnel through space and time, connecting two distant points in the universe. Mr. Clark explains that if you could create a wormhole, you could theoretically travel from one location to another instantly, bypassing all the space in between. The diagram he draws looks like a tube with two openings, one on each end, and here is where it gets interesting. Fans notice that the diagram Mr. Clark drew looks almost exactly like the drawing Will Byers made of Vecna's lair. Will's drawing shows a central structure with multiple tunnels or pathways branching out from it. Each pathway leads to one of the kidnapped children. The implication is clear. Vecna is not just holding these kids in a prison, he is turning them into wormholes. He is using their consciousness as anchor points for gates that will open across the world. When Mr. Clark talks about wormholes connecting distant points in space, he is unknowingly describing exactly what Vecna is planning to do with the 12 children. This also explains why Vecna chose children specifically instead of adults. Children are more vulnerable. Their minds are easier to break and reshape. They have not yet developed the psychological defenses that adults have. They are more susceptible to fear, more easily controlled, and less likely to resist once their sense of self has been destroyed. Vecna has also demonstrated a specific interest in children throughout the series. He targeted teenagers in Season 4. He took Will as a child in Season 1. He possessed Will in Season 2. Children seem to be more compatible with the Upside Down's influence, more capable of serving as vessels for psychic power. This is why Brenner experimented on children at Hawkins' lab instead of adults. This is why Eleven and the other numbered kids were all young when they developed their abilities. The younger you are, the more malleable your mind is, and the more useful you are as a tool for someone like Vecna. The 12 children he has taken are all around the same age, all young enough to be broken, but old enough to have the mental capacity to sustain the kind of psychic connection Vecna needs. The number 12 is also significant. In various mythologies and occult traditions, 12 is a powerful number. 12 disciples, 12 months, 12 hours on a clock, 12 signs of the zodiac. It is a number that represents completion, wholeness, a full cycle. If Vecna is trying to create a complete global network of gates, 12 would be the number he needs. 12 children, 12 gates, 12 points of invasion spread across the world. This is not just about practicality, it is about ritual. Vecna has always had a theatrical, almost religious quality to his actions. He does not just kill people, he curses them, torments them with visions, and breaks them psychologically before finishing them off. He is not a mindless monster. He is a deliberate, calculating villain who believes he is reshaping the world according to some grand design. The cult of Vecna fits perfectly into this mindset. He is not just building an army, he is building a congregation, 12 followers who will carry out his apocalyptic vision. Max's situation provides a template for what is happening to the other children. Max has been trapped in Vecna's mind palace since the end of Season 4, and we see in Volume 1 that she has been wandering through Henry Creel's memories, trying to find a way out. She tells Holly that Vecna's memories are like a maze, all jumbled and out of order, impossible to navigate. But Max has discovered something important. There is a cave in Vecna's memories, a place that Henry himself is afraid to enter. Max has been exploring this cave, and she believes it holds the key to escaping. She has a plan, though she does not reveal what it is yet. The point is that Max, who has been trapped longer than any of the other children, is starting to resist. She is fighting back. But Max is uniquely strong. She survived Vecna's curse once already in Season 4 by using music to break his hold on her mind. She has experience dealing with trauma and grief. She knows how to compartmentalize and push through pain. The other children do not have those advantages. They are being broken down much faster than Max was, and once they are broken, Vecna will have complete control over them. There is also a connection between this theory and the Mind Flayer's ultimate goals. If the theory from earlier is correct, and the Mind Flayer is the true villain controlling Vecna, then the 12 children are not just serving Vecna's plan, they are serving the Mind Flayer's plan. The Mind Flayer wants to consume everything. It wants to spread its influence across the entire world, turning every living thing into part of its hive mind. But to do that, it needs access to the world. It needs gates, lots of gates. Vecna is providing those gates by turning the 12 children into living portals. Once the gates are open, the Mind Flayer can send its forces through. Demogorgons, Demobats, Mind Flayer fragments, everything it has at its disposal. And as more creatures cross over, the barrier between dimensions weakens further. Eventually, the Upside Down and the real world will merge completely, just like they have started to merge in Hawkins. Only this time, it will not be limited to one small town. It will be global. The Mind Flayer will have won. The kidnapping of Holly Wheeler is particularly important to the theory because it brings the threat directly into the Wheeler family. Nancy and Mike have been fighting the Upside Down since Season 1, but until now, their family has been relatively safe. Karen and Ted Wheeler were oblivious to what was really happening in Hawkins. They thought their kids were just dealing with normal teenage drama, but now, their youngest child has been taken. This raises the stakes in a very personal way for Mike and Nancy. Mike especially has always been driven by the need to protect the people he loves. When Will disappeared in Season 1, Mike did not stop until he found him. Now his own sister is in danger, and he will not rest until she is saved. This also creates an interesting parallel. Will was the first child taken into the Upside Down in 1983. Holly is one of the last children taken in 1986. The story that began with a child disappearing is ending with another child disappearing. But this time, instead of one child, there are 12. And instead of being hidden victims, they are being turned into weapons. We also know from Volume 1 that Vecna's lair is surrounded by a mysterious wall. Max mentions that there is a barrier of some kind, a structure that encloses the entire area where Vecna has the children trapped. This matches up with the wormhole theory. If Vecna is creating a massive psychic construct that spans multiple dimensions, it would make sense for there to be some kind of boundary or shell around it. The wall could be a physical manifestation of the psychic barrier that separates the Mind Palace from the rest of the Upside Down. Inside the wall, Vecna has complete control. He can manipulate reality, create illusions, and reshape the environment however he wants. Outside the wall, he is just another creature in the Upside Down. The 12 children are being held inside this wall, inside this controlled space, where Vecna can work on them without interference. But if the wall is breached, if someone like Max or Holly or the rescue team from the outside manages to break through, then Vecna's control could be disrupted. This might be the key to saving the children before Vecna completes his plan. The timeline is also critical. Vecna took the children on November 6, 3 years to the day after Will disappeared. This is not a coincidence. November 6, 1983 is when the Upside Down first touched Hawkins. It is when the gate opened. It is when everything started. By taking the children on the same date 3 years later, Vecna is completing a cycle. He is bringing the story full circle, just like the Duffer Brothers promised. But he is also working within a specific time frame. Vecna needs to break, reshape, and deploy these children before 11 and the others can stop him. Every day they remain trapped is another day closer to Vecna finishing his transformation of them. The longer they stay in his Mind Palace, the harder it will be to bring them back. Eventually, there may be nothing left to save. The children they were will be gone completely, replaced by empty vessels that exist only to serve Vecna's will. This theory also explains why Vecna has been relatively quiet during Volume 1. He is not out hunting new victims or actively attacking the group. He is focused on the children. He is working on them, breaking them down piece by piece, preparing them for their role in his plan. This is a long-term project. It requires concentration and effort. Vecna cannot afford to be distracted by fighting 11 or dealing with the military or anything else. He needs time, and by taking 12 children at once, he has forced the heroes into an impossible situation. They have to split their focus. Some of them have to go into the Upside Down to try and rescue the kids. Others have to stay in the real world and deal with the consequences of the rift that has already opened. Vecna has created chaos, and in that chaos, he is working toward his ultimate goal. The question is whether 11, Will, Max, and the rest of the group can figure out his plan in time to stop it. Volume 2 will likely reveal the full extent of Vecna's plan for the 12 children, and it will be up to our heroes to save them before it is too late. But if this theory is correct, then the fate of the entire world depends on rescuing those kids. Because if Vecna succeeds, if he turns them into his cult of Vecna, if he opens 12 gates across the globe, then the final battle will not just be about saving Hawkins, it will be about saving humanity itself. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the theory that the Upside Down may actually allow time travel. Time travel through the Upside Down. One of the strangest mysteries in Stranger Things has been hiding in plain sight since Season 4. When Nancy Wheeler entered the Upside Down and went into the Wheeler family house, she noticed something disturbing. Everything in the house looked exactly as it did in 1983. Her bedroom had the same posters on the wall, the same furniture, the same decorations. It was not just similar, it was identical. At first, Nancy thought this was just how the Upside Down worked, creating a dark mirror of the real world. But then she realized something that changed everything. Her diary was there, sitting on her desk, and the last entry in that diary was from November 6, 1983. Nothing after that date existed in the Upside Down version of her room. It was like the entire dimension had taken a photograph of Hawkins on that specific day and never updated. The Upside Down was frozen in time, and the date it was frozen on was not random. November 6, 1983 was the day Eleven made psychic contact with the Demogorgon in the sensory deprivation tank at Hawkins' lab. It was the day the first gate opened. It was the day everything started. But why would the Upside Down be stuck on that date? What does it mean? And more importantly, could it be the key to fixing everything that has gone wrong since? The answer, according to one of the most fascinating theories in the Stranger Things fandom, involves time travel. Not time travel in the traditional sense, with machines and DeLoreans and flux capacitors, but time travel through the fundamental nature of what the Upside Down actually is. According to this theory, the Upside Down is not just an alternate dimension, it is a wormhole, a tunnel through space and time that connects our world to another dimension called Dimension X. And because it is a wormhole, it has properties that allow for temporal manipulation. The Upside Down being frozen on November 6, 1983 is not a bug, it is a feature. It is evidence that time works differently there. And if time works differently there, then it might be possible to use the Upside Down to go back and change what happened, to rewrite history, to prevent the gate from ever opening in the first place. This theory suggests that the final solution to defeating Vecna and the Mind Flayer might not be to destroy them in a big battle. It might be to erase them from the timeline entirely by undoing the moment that brought them into our world. The foundation for this theory comes from the science lessons that Mr. Clark has been giving throughout the entire series. Mr. Clark is the science teacher at Hawkins Middle School, and he has been the boys' go-to source for understanding the weird things happening in their town since Season 1. In that first season, when Mike, Dustin, and Lucas were trying to figure out where Will had gone, they asked Mr. Clark about alternate dimensions. Mr. Clark explained the concept using a simple demonstration. He took a plate and drew a line on it with a marker, representing a person walking from point A to point B. Then he folded the plate in half, bringing the 2 points together. He explained that if you could create a doorway between the 2 points, you could travel between them instantly, without having to walk the distance. This was his way of explaining how gates work. A gate is not just a hole in space. It is a shortcut that bends reality and connects two distant places. This lesson became the basis for understanding the Upside Down throughout the series. In Season 2, Mr. Clark provided another crucial piece of information when the boys asked him about the tunnels under Hawkins. He explained that the tunnels were part of a hive mind system, all connected and controlled by a single intelligence. In Season 3, his lessons continued, helping the kids understand electromagnetic fields and how the Russians were using them to tear open a new gate. But it is in Season 5 that Mr. Clark gives the most important lesson of all. In Volume 1, Mr. Clark is teaching his class about wormholes, specifically Einstein-Rosen bridges. He draws a diagram on the chalkboard showing how a wormhole works. It looks like a tube with two openings, one on each end. He explains that a wormhole is a theoretical passage through space-time that could connect two distant points in the universe. If you entered one end of the wormhole, you would come out the other end instantly, regardless of how far apart the 2 points actually are. But here is the critical detail that most people miss. Wormholes do not just connect different places, they can also connect different times. If the physics work out right, a wormhole could theoretically allow you to travel backward or forward in time, not just across space. Mr. Clark does not explicitly say this in his lecture because he is teaching middle school kids and does not want to blow their minds too much, but the implication is there for anyone who knows the science. Einstein-Rosen bridges are a real theoretical concept in physics, and one of their potential properties is time travel. If the Upside Down is an Einstein-Rosen bridge, as Mr. Clark's diagram suggests, then it is not just a portal to another dimension, it is a portal to another time as well. This would explain why the Upside Down is frozen on November 6, 1983. That is not the day the dimension was created. That is the day the wormhole stabilized and locked onto that specific point in time. When Eleven made contact with the Demogorgon and tore open the first gate, she did not just open a doorway to another place. She opened a doorway to a specific moment in time. And that moment has been repeating, or more accurately, has been frozen ever since. The production designer for Stranger Things, Chris Trujillo, confirmed this in an interview when he was asked about the nature of the Upside Down. He said that the Upside Down is an amalgamation of the alternate dimension where number 1, also known as Vecna, gets pushed, and the town of Hawkins. He said it functions as a space-time bridge. This is official confirmation from someone who works on the show that the Upside Down is not just a place, it is a connection point between different dimensions and different times. The word amalgamation is important here. It means a mixture or combination of different things. The Upside Down is a blend of Dimension X, the barren wasteland where Vecna was banished, and Hawkins on November 6, 1983. It is like someone took a photograph of Hawkins on that date and overlaid it onto Dimension X, creating a hybrid space that exists outside normal time. This is why everything in the Upside Down looks like Hawkins, but is also decayed and covered in vines and spores. It is Hawkins, but corrupted and frozen. The physical structure of the Upside Down also supports the wormhole theory. In Volume 1 of Season 5, we learn that there is a wall surrounding the Upside Down. This wall is not just a random feature, it has a specific shape and structure. Max mentions it when she is trapped in Vecna's mind palace, and Will draws it when he is creating his diagram of Vecna's lair. Fans notice that this wall looks like a tube or cylinder, and if you remember Mr. Clark's diagram of an Einstein-Rosen bridge, a wormhole has a tubular shape. It is a tunnel connecting 2 points. The wall surrounding the Upside Down is not a wall in the traditional sense. It is the outer boundary of the wormhole itself. Everything inside the wall is part of the bridge between Hawkins and Dimension X. Everything outside the wall is normal space. This means that when characters enter the Upside Down, they are not just stepping into another dimension, they are stepping into a wormhole, a passage through space and time. And if they knew how to navigate it properly, they could theoretically use it to travel to different points in time, not just different points in space. There is also the curious detail of Mrs. Kelly's necklace. Mrs. Kelly is the school counselor at Hawkins High School who appeared in Season 4. She helped Max deal with her trauma and grief after Billy's death. Mrs. Kelly wears a necklace with a key-shaped pendant, but if you look closely at the pendant, it is not just a key, it is shaped like a clock. Specifically, it looks like the key you would use to wind a grandfather clock, which is significant because Vecna uses grandfather clock imagery throughout Season 4 to represent the countdown to his victims' deaths. The theory suggests that Mrs. Kelly's clock necklace is a deliberate hint from the Duffer Brothers about the role time will play in Season 5. Clocks represent time. Keys represent unlocking something. A clock key could represent the ability to unlock or manipulate time. Some fans believe Mrs. Kelly might have a bigger role to play in the final episodes, possibly helping the characters understand how to use the Upside Down's temporal properties to their advantage. Others think the necklace is just a visual clue, a symbol that tells the audience to pay attention to time-related themes in the story. The most compelling evidence for the time travel theory comes from the title of the final episode. The last episode of Stranger Things Season 5 is called The Right Side Up. This is a play on words, the opposite of the Upside Down. But what does it mean? On the surface, it could just mean that our dimension, the normal world, is the right side up compared to the Upside Down. But there is a deeper meaning. The word right side can be broken into 2 parts, right and side. Right as in correct, right as in the opposite of wrong. What if the right side up means turning things right side up, as in fixing what was turned upside down? What if it means correcting the timeline, flipping reality back to how it should have been before the gate opened? The title suggests that the final episode will involve some kind of reversal, not just defeating Vecna, but undoing the damage he has caused, reversing the merge between Hawkins and the Upside Down, closing the gates permanently. And the only way to do that might be to go back to the beginning and prevent them from opening in the first place. This is where Eleven and Will come into the picture. Eleven is the one who opened the first gate on November 6, 1983. She did it accidentally while in the sensory deprivation tank, making psychic contact with the Demogorgon. At the time, she did not understand what she was doing. She was just a scared kid following orders from Dr. Brenner. But that moment changed everything. It created the bridge between Hawkins and the Upside Down. It froze the Upside Down on that date. It set in motion every horrible thing that has happened since. If Eleven could go back to that moment, if she could re-experience it with the knowledge and power she has now, could she do it differently? Could she make contact with the Demogorgon without tearing open the gate, or could she avoid making contact altogether? The theory suggests that in the final episodes, Eleven might use the Upside Down's temporal properties to travel back to November 6, 1983, and change what happened. She would essentially be rewriting history, creating a new timeline where the gate never opened, where Will was never taken, where none of the suffering and death of the past 3 years ever occurred. But there is a problem with this plan. If Eleven goes back and prevents the gate from opening, then Will never gets taken into the Upside Down. And if Will never gets taken, then Mike, Dustin, and Lucas never meet Eleven. They never become friends. They never fight the Demogorgon together. The entire group, the family they have built over 5 seasons, never forms. Everyone goes back to living their normal lives, unaware of the alternate dimension that almost destroyed them. This raises a huge question. Would Eleven be willing to erase the relationships she has built just to save the world? Would Mike be willing to lose Eleven forever if it meant saving everyone else? Would the group be willing to sacrifice their friendship if it meant undoing all the pain and trauma they have endured? These are the kinds of questions that time travel stories always have to grapple with. Changing the past has consequences. Even if you are changing it for the better, you are still erasing the version of reality that you lived through, and that can feel like a death of its own. This is where Will's role becomes crucial. Will has been connected to the Upside Down since 1983. He was the first victim. He was possessed by the Mind Flayer. He can still sense when Vecna is near. And in Season 5, Volume 1, we learned that Will can tap into Vecna's powers and control the hive mind. Will is the living embodiment of the bridge between Hawkins and the Upside Down. He exists in both worlds simultaneously. If anyone can navigate the temporal properties of the Upside Down, it is Will. The theory suggests that Will and Eleven will work together in the final episode to rewrite November 6, 1983. Eleven provides the raw power. Will provides the connection and the understanding of how the Upside Down works. Together, they create a new version of that day, one where the gate does not open, or where it opens in a controlled way that does not allow Vecna and the Mind Flayer to invade. This would bring the story full circle. It began with Will disappearing on November 6, 1983. It ends with Will and Eleven going back to that date and fixing what went wrong. There is also the question of what happens to Vecna and the Mind Flayer if the timeline is rewritten. If the gate never opens, does Vecna stay trapped in Dimension X forever? Does the Mind Flayer lose its connection to our world? Or do they still exist, waiting for another opportunity to break through? The theory suggests that rewriting November 6, 1983 would not erase Vecna from existence. He was banished to Dimension X in 1979, years before the events of Season 1. That part of history would remain unchanged, but it would cut off his access to Hawkins. It would seal him away permanently, unable to reach our world because the bridge that connected him to us would never be built. The Mind Flayer would remain in Dimension X as well, an ancient and malevolent force, but one that is contained and powerless to affect our reality. The threat would not be destroyed, it would simply be locked away where it belongs. Of course, time travel always comes with risks. If Eleven and Will go back to November 6, 1983 and change what happens, they could accidentally make things worse. They could create a timeline where Vecna finds another way to open the gates. They could erase not just their friendships, but their own existence. Time paradoxes are notoriously tricky. If Will never gets taken, then he never forms the connection to the Upside Down. But if he never forms that connection, then he would not have the ability to help rewrite the timeline in the first place. It is a loop, a contradiction that could collapse the entire plan. The show would have to be very careful about how it handles the mechanics of time travel to avoid creating plot holes or inconsistencies. But if the Duffer Brothers had been planning this twist since the beginning, they would have built in safeguards and explanations to make it work within the logic of the show. One possible solution is that the characters do not actually travel back in time physically. Instead, they re-experience November 6, 1983 psychically, similar to how Eleven re-experienced her memories in the Nina Project in Season 4. Eleven could enter a deep meditative state, connect to the Upside Down through the temporal bridge, and project her consciousness back to that moment in 1983. From there, she could interact with her younger self, guiding her past self to make different choices. This would avoid the physical time travel paradoxes while still allowing her to change the outcome. Will could serve as the anchor, keeping Eleven tethered to the present while she works in the past. This way, the timeline gets rewritten without the characters physically disappearing from 1986. It is a psychic rewrite, not a physical one. And when it is done, reality shifts to accommodate the new history. The title, The Right Side Up, also suggests a reversal on a larger scale. Throughout Season 4 and Season 5, the Upside Down has been bleeding into Hawkins, corrupting the town and merging the two dimensions. By the end of Volume 1, large portions of Hawkins are covered in vines and spores. The sky is dark and red. The town is dying. The right side up could mean flipping this process, pushing the Upside Down back where it came from, restoring Hawkins to its normal state. But it could also mean something more literal, flipping the Upside Down right side up, turning it back into Dimension X, removing the overlay of Hawkins from November 6, 1983, and returning the dimension to its original barren state. This would sever the connection permanently. The bridge would collapse, the wormhole would close, and the two worlds would be separate again, as they were always meant to be. The emotional weight of this theory is what makes it so compelling. If the final solution involves rewriting history, then the characters would have to say goodbye to the lives they have lived. They would have to accept that the friendships and love they have found will be erased, at least in the form they currently exist. But maybe, just maybe, they would find each other again in the new timeline. Maybe Mike and Eleven would still meet somehow. Maybe the group would still become friends. Maybe the bonds they formed are strong enough to transcend timelines. Or maybe they would not. Maybe they would go back to being strangers, living separate lives, never knowing what they sacrificed to save the world. That uncertainty is what makes the choice so difficult and so powerful. They would be betting everything on the hope that saving the world is worth losing each other. And that is the ultimate test of heroism. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the theory that Max may end up fighting Eleven while trapped inside Vecna's mind. Max will fight Eleven while trapped in Vecna's mind. The end of Stranger Things Season 4 left viewers with one of the most heartbreaking cliffhangers in the entire series. Max Mayfield, played by Sadie Sink, died. Vecna's curse killed her. Her bones broke. Her eyes went blank. Lucas held her body and screamed for help while her favorite song, Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush, played in the background. It was devastating. But then, Eleven, using every ounce of power she had left, reached out from across the country and brought Max back. Her heart started beating again. Her lungs filled with air. She was alive. Except she was not really alive. Not in any meaningful way. Max's body survived, but her consciousness, her mind, her soul, whatever you want to call the essence of who Max is, was gone. Eleven tried to find her. She went into Max's mind looking for any sign of her friend, but there was nothing there. Max's mind was empty, a void. And for over a year, Max has been in a coma at Hawkins Hospital, her body breathing, but her mind trapped somewhere unreachable. The question that haunted everyone was simple. Where is Max? Where did her consciousness go when she died? And the answer, revealed in Volume 1 of Season 5, is more horrifying than anyone imagined. Max has been trapped inside Vecna's mind the entire time. Volume 1 does not waste time getting to this revelation. In the early episodes, we see Lucas Sinclair desperately trying to reach Max. He sits by her hospital bed every day, playing Running Up That Hill on a boombox, hoping the song that saved her once before will bring her back again. But Max does not wake up. Her body remains still, unresponsive, locked in the coma that has held her since the end of Season 4. Then, in Episode 4, Holly Wheeler gets kidnapped by Vecna along with 11 other children from Hawkins. Holly finds herself in a strange house, a twisted version of the Creel family home, surrounded by Vecna's memories. She is terrified and confused. Vecna appears to her disguised as her childhood imaginary friend, telling her she is safe as long as she stays in the house and does not go into the woods. But Holly does not listen. She finds a map in the mailbox that leads her to a cave in the woods, and when she enters that cave, she finds someone she did not expect, Max Mayfield. Max is alive, at least in this place. She is conscious, aware, and able to speak, but she is not free. She has been trapped in Vecna's mindscape for over a year, wandering through Henry Creel's memories, trying to find a way out. Max explains to Holly what happened. When Vecna killed her at the end of Season 4, her consciousness was pulled into his mind. She became the fourth and final gate, the fourth victim whose death opened a rift between Hawkins and the Upside Down. But unlike Vecna's other victims, who died completely, Max's consciousness survived because Eleven brought her body back to life at the last possible second. This created a unique situation. Max's body is alive in the real world, but her mind is imprisoned in Vecna's world. She is stuck in a nightmare realm made up of Henry Creel's memories, a constantly shifting maze of his childhood, his crimes, his transformation into Vecna. Max tells Holly that the memories are all jumbled and out of order. There is no clear path forward. Every time she thinks she has found a way out, the landscape changes and she is lost again. She has been searching for over a year, and she still has not found the exit. But she has found something, the cave. The one place in all of Henry's memories that he refuses to enter. The one place that scares him. The cave is significant because it appears in the Broadway play Stranger Things: The First Shadow. In the play, we learn that young Henry Creel stumbled into a cave in Nevada in the late 1950s. Inside that cave, he was accidentally transported to Dimension X, where he encountered the Mind Flayer. The Mind Flayer corrupted Henry, gave him his powers, and turned him into the monster he would eventually become. That cave represents the moment Henry lost control of his own life. It is the source of his trauma, the place where everything went wrong. And even now, decades later, Vecna cannot bring himself to go near it. When Max backs into the cave while talking to Holly, Vecna stays outside. He will not follow her in. This tells us two things. First, the cave is a weakness. It is the one place where Vecna's power does not fully reach. Second, the cave might hold the key to escaping. If Henry is afraid of it, then it might be the one place Max can hide, or the one route she can take to break free from his control. But here is where the theory gets dark. Max has been trapped in Vecna's mind for over a year. She has been surrounded by his memories, his thoughts, his influence. She has been living inside the consciousness of the most evil being in the Stranger Things universe. And Vecna is not just keeping her there as a prisoner, he is using her. Vecna tells Holly directly that he plans to break, reshape, and take control of the children he has kidnapped. He is not just holding them, he is transforming them into something else, something that will serve his purposes. Max has been in his possession longer than any of the other children. She was the first one trapped. She has had more time to be exposed to his corruption, more time for him to work on breaking her down and reshaping her mind. And if Vecna can control Max, if he can turn her into a weapon, then he has the perfect tool to use against Eleven. Because Max is not just any prisoner, she is Eleven's best friend. The relationship between Eleven and Max is one of the most important in the entire series. When Max first appeared in Season 2, Eleven was jealous of her because she thought Max was trying to steal Mike away. But by the end of that season, Eleven and Max had bonded. They became friends. And in Season 3, their friendship deepened. They went shopping together at the mall. They bonded over their frustrations with Mike and Lucas. They laughed together, had fun together, supported each other. By Season 4, Max and Eleven were closer than ever. When Max was struggling with grief and trauma after Billy's death, Eleven was there for her. And when Max was cursed by Vecna, Eleven fought desperately to save her. Eleven brought Max back from death itself because she could not bear to lose her. The bond between them is unbreakable. Which is exactly why Vecna would want to use Max against Eleven. If Vecna can force Max to fight Eleven, if he can turn Max into a puppet and make her attack her own best friend, it would be the most emotionally devastating thing he could possibly do. This is where the theory comes together. In the final episodes of Season 5, Eleven will enter Vecna's mindscape to confront him directly. This has been building since Season 4, when Eleven and Vecna first battled inside Max's mind. The final confrontation will be a psychic battle, a clash of wills in the mental realm where both of them are at their most powerful. But when Eleven enters Vecna's mind, she will not just find Vecna waiting for her, she will find Max. And Max will not be the friend she remembers. Max will be under Vecna's control, transformed into a weapon, forced to fight against Eleven. Imagine the horror of that moment. Eleven finally finds Max after searching for her for over a year. She is relieved, overjoyed, ready to save her friend and bring her home. But then Max attacks. Not because she wants to, not because she has turned evil, but because Vecna is controlling her. using her body like a puppet, forcing her to hurt the one person she cares about most. 11 would be faced with an impossible choice: fight back and risk killing her best friend, or hold back and let Max kill her. The canonical basis for this theory is strong. We know from Volume 1 that Vecna has complete control over the mindscape where Max is trapped. He can manipulate the environment, create illusions, and reshape reality however he wants within that space. We also know that Vecna has a history of using people's loved ones against them. In Season 4, he showed Nancy visions of her family being killed. He tormented Max with visions of Billy. He used Chrissy's mother against her. Vecna understands that the most effective way to break someone is to weaponize their emotions. And what would break 11 more than having to fight Max? It would destroy her psychologically. Even if 11 won the fight, even if she managed to free Max from Vecna's control, the trauma of having to hurt her friend would stay with her forever. This is the kind of psychological warfare that Vecna excels at. He does not just kill people, he makes them suffer first. He makes them watch as everything they love is destroyed. Forcing 11 to fight Max would be the ultimate expression of his cruelty. There is also the question of how powerful Max would be under Vecna's control. Max does not naturally have psychic powers like 11 does, but she is currently existing inside a psychic space. She is part of Vecna's consciousness, and in that realm, the normal rules do not apply. Vecna could grant Max temporary abilities, making her strong enough to pose a real threat to 11. Or he could simply use Max as a distraction, forcing 11 to divide her attention between fighting Vecna and protecting Max. Either way, Max becomes a liability, a weakness that Vecna can exploit. 11's greatest strength has always been her love for her friends and her determination to protect them. But in this scenario, that strength becomes a weakness, because the person she most wants to protect is the person she might have to fight. The cave that Max discovered in Vecna's memories adds another layer to this theory. Max tells Holly that she has a plan to escape, but she does not reveal what that plan is. The cave is clearly central to whatever Max is planning. She has been studying it, exploring it, trying to understand why Henry is so afraid of it. If the cave represents the moment when the Mind Flayer corrupted Henry, then maybe it also represents the one place where that corruption can be undone. Maybe inside the cave there is a way to sever the connection between Vecna and the Mind Flayer. Maybe there is a way to free Henry from the control that has defined his entire life. And if Max can reach that place, if she can use whatever power or knowledge exists inside the cave, then maybe she can break free from Vecna's control before he forces her to fight 11. But getting to the cave would not be easy. Vecna would try to stop her. He would use every trick, every illusion, every bit of power he has to keep Max away from that place. Because if she reaches the cave, she might discover the one thing that can destroy him. Lucas's role in this theory is also important. Throughout Volume 1, Lucas is shown desperately trying to bring Max back. He plays her favorite song, he talks to her comatose body, telling her about everything that is happening in Hawkins, keeping her updated as if she can hear him. He refuses to give up on her, even though everyone else has started to lose hope. Lucas's love for Max is unwavering, and if Max does end up fighting 11 under Vecna's control, Lucas might be the key to breaking that control. Not through physical intervention, because Lucas is not in the mindscape where the battle is happening, but through the connection he has with Max. Throughout Season 4, we saw that music and emotional connections can break Vecna's hold on people. Max escaped Vecna's curse the first time because her friends played Running Up That Hill, and the emotional power of that song pulled her back from the brink. If Lucas can reach Max while she is under Vecna's control, if he can somehow communicate with her through their emotional bond, then maybe he can remind her of who she is. Maybe he can give her the strength to fight back against Vecna from the inside. The idea of Max fighting 11 also ties into the broader theme of Vecna using people's trauma against them. Max has been dealing with guilt and grief since Billy died in Season 3. She blames herself for his death because part of her wanted him gone. Part of her was relieved when he died because he had been so cruel to her for so long. That guilt has eaten away at her, making her vulnerable to Vecna's curse in Season 4. And now, trapped in Vecna's mind, that guilt would be amplified 1,000 times. Vecna could use Max's guilt against her, telling her that she deserves to suffer, that she is a bad person, that she should hurt the people who care about her because she does not deserve their love. This kind of psychological manipulation is exactly how Vecna operates. He finds the deepest, darkest parts of a person's psyche and twists them into weapons. If he can convince Max that she is worthless, that she is broken beyond repair, then she will be easier to control. She will stop fighting back because she will believe she deserves what is happening to her. But here is the thing about Max. She is a fighter. She has survived abuse from Billy. She has survived losing her stepbrother. She has survived poverty and instability and a mother who checked out emotionally after Billy's death. She has survived Vecna's curse once already. Max is one of the strongest characters in Stranger Things, not because she has superpowers or because she is physically tough, but because she refuses to give up. Even when everything seems hopeless, even when she is drowning in grief and guilt, Max keeps going. And if Vecna tries to use her as a weapon against Eleven, Max will fight back. She will resist his control with everything she has. The question is whether her resistance will be enough. Can Max break free from Vecna's influence through sheer force of will, or will she need help from the outside? Will Eleven have to find a way to reach Max's true consciousness, the part of her that is still in there fighting, and pull her back before Vecna's control becomes permanent? The theory also suggests that the confrontation between Max and Eleven could be the emotional climax of the entire series. Think about it. Stranger Things has always been about friendship. It is about a group of kids who find each other, support each other, and fight for each other against impossible odds. The core message of the show is that love and friendship are stronger than evil. So what would be the ultimate test of that message? Forcing two best friends to fight each other. Forcing Eleven to hurt Max in order to save her. It would push both characters to their absolute limits. Eleven would have to prove that her love for Max is strong enough to survive even this. And Max would have to prove that her sense of self is strong enough to resist Vecna's control. If they can both survive this confrontation, if they can find their way back to each other despite everything Vecna has done to break them, then it would be the ultimate affirmation of the show's central theme. Friendship can survive anything. Love is stronger than evil. No matter how dark things get, the bonds between people can endure. There is also a practical reason why this theory makes sense from a storytelling perspective. The Duffer Brothers need to create emotional stakes for the final battle. We have seen Eleven fight monsters before. We have seen her close gates and save the day. But we have never seen her fight someone she loves. That is new. That is a challenge Eleven has never faced before. And it raises the stakes in a way that a straightforward battle with Vecna would not. If Eleven fights Vecna one-on-one, we know she will probably win because she is the hero. But if she has to fight Max at the same time, suddenly the outcome is uncertain. Suddenly, we are not sure if Eleven can pull this off without losing something or someone she cares about. That uncertainty is what makes great drama. The audience needs to believe that the heroes might actually fail, and having Max under Vecna's control creates that possibility in a very real way. Max's current state also makes her the perfect hostage. Vecna does not just have Max's body, he has her soul. Her consciousness is literally inside his mind. He can do whatever he wants with her. He can torture her. He can manipulate her memories. He can reshape her personality. And the longer she stays trapped, the more damage he can do. Every day that passes is another day that Max is under his influence. Another day that her sense of self erodes a little bit more. By the time Eleven finally confronts Vecna, Max might be so deeply under his control that freeing her seems impossible. This is the nightmare scenario. That Eleven arrives too late. That Max is too far gone to be saved. That the friend she has been searching for no longer exists in any meaningful way. And Eleven would have to decide. Does she let Max go, accepting that her friend is lost forever? Or does she keep fighting, believing that some part of Max is still in there, still worth saving, no matter how small that part might be? The answer, of course, is that Eleven will never give up on Max. That is who Eleven is. She does not abandon the people she loves. She fought to bring Hopper back from Russia. She fought to save Max from Vecna's first attack, and she will fight to free Max from Vecna's mind, even if it means risking her own life to do it, because that is what friends do. They save each other, no matter the cost. And when the final battle comes, when Max and Eleven are forced to face each other in the nightmare realm of Vecna's consciousness, it will not be a fight between enemies. It will be a fight for survival, a fight to reclaim what Vecna has stolen, a fight to prove that even in the darkest places, even when all hope seems lost, friendship can still win. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the D&D critical role theory, the idea that 11 plus 8 plus 1 adds up to 20. The D&D critical role theory, from the very first scene of Stranger Things, Dungeons & Dragons has been more than just a game that the kids play in Mike's basement. It has been the framework for understanding everything that happens in Hawkins. When a monster appears, the boys name it after a D&D creature because the game gives them a language to describe the impossible. When they need to figure out how to fight something, they look to the game for strategies and solutions. The Demogorgon, the Mind Flayer, Vecna, all of these names come from Dungeons & Dragons. And every single time the kids have referenced something from the game, it has eventually become real in their world. So when fans started noticing a very specific pattern involving numbers, psychic powers, and one of the most important concepts in Dungeons & Dragons, they realized that the Duffer Brothers might have been planning the ultimate twist since the very beginning. This theory is called the critical role theory, and if it is correct, it reveals exactly how Eleven and her friends will defeat Vecna in the series finale, by combining their powers to roll a natural 20. In Dungeons & Dragons, players use a 20-sided die to determine the outcome of actions their characters take. When you want to attack an enemy, cast a spell, or attempt something difficult, you roll the die. The number you roll, combined with your character's skills and abilities, determines whether you succeed or fail. Most rolls fall somewhere in the middle. You might roll a 10 or a 12, which could be good enough to succeed at an easy task, but not enough for something really challenging. But there are two numbers that are special. Rolling a 1 is called a critical failure. It means not only did you fail, but you failed in the worst possible way. Everything goes wrong. But rolling a 20, the highest number on the die, is called a critical success or a critical hit. It means you succeeded perfectly. You did better than anyone could have hoped. It is the best outcome possible. When you roll a natural 20, you do not just hit your enemy. You deliver a devastating blow that can change the entire course of the battle. It is the moment when everything comes together and the heroes win against impossible odds. Now, here is where things get interesting. Stranger Things has always had characters with psychic powers, specifically the numbered children from Hawkins' lab. These children were all given numbers based on the order they were experimented on. Henry Creel, the first test subject, was number 1. Kali Prasad, who appeared in Season 2, was number 8. And Jane Ives, the main character we know as 11, was number 11. These numbers have always been important to their identities. 11 has her tattoo. Kali has hers. The numbers define who they are and where they came from. But what if the numbers mean something more? What if they are not just identification markers? What if they are literally the numbers needed to roll a natural 20? Here is the math. 11 is 11. Kali is 8. And in Season 5, Volume 1, we learned that Will Byers can now channel the powers of Vecna, who is number 1. Will does not have his own natural powers like 11 does. His abilities come directly from his connection to Vecna through the hive mind. When Will uses his powers, he is essentially tapping into 1's abilities. So Will represents 1. Now add them up. 11 plus 8 plus 1 equals 20, the exact number you need for a critical hit in Dungeons & Dragons. The theory suggests that in the final battle against Vecna, 11, Kali, and Will combine their powers into one unified attack. 11 brings her raw telekinetic and telepathic strength. Kali brings her ability to create illusions and manipulate what people see and experience. Will brings his connection to the hive mind and his ability to control the creatures of the Upside Down. Separately, none of them are strong enough to defeat Vecna. 11 has tried multiple times and failed. Will's powers only work when he is close to Vecna, and they are borrowed, not his own. Kali has been off the grid since Season 2, not involved in any of the major battles. But together, if they combine their abilities into one coordinated strike, they would represent the natural 20, the perfect roll, the critical hit that destroys Vecna once and for all. It is an elegant solution that ties together the show's obsession with Dungeons & Dragons, the importance of the numbered children, and the need for teamwork and unity to overcome evil. The canonical basis for this theory is stronger than almost any other fan theory in Stranger Things history. First, let's talk about how the show has used Dungeons & Dragons as foreshadowing. In Season 1, the boys are playing a campaign where they have to fight a Demogorgon. Days later, a real Demogorgon appears in Hawkins. In Season 2, Dustin researches the Mind Flayer in his D&D guidebook and discovers that it is an ancient evil that controls lesser creatures through a hive mind. Then, the actual Mind Flayer appears and does exactly that. In Season 3, Will sets up a campaign where the party has to fight zombie-like creatures. Then the Mind Flayer creates the Flayed, people who have been turned into zombie-like servants. In Season 4, Eddie's campaign features Vecna as the villain, and then the real Vecna appears as the main antagonist. Every single time the game has predicted what is coming. The Duffer Brothers use the campaigns as a storytelling device to tell the audience what is going to happen next. So when you look at the mechanics of the game, at the dice rolls and the numbers, it makes sense that those would also be meaningful. The return of Callie in Volume 2 is confirmed. This is not speculation or wishful thinking. The Duffer Brothers and the official Stranger Things social media accounts have revealed that Linnea Berthelsen, the actress who plays Callie, appears in the second half of Season 5. Callie has been absent from the show since Season 2, when Eleven traveled to Chicago to find her and learn more about her past. Many fans thought Callie's storyline was a dead end, a one-episode detour that did not really matter to the larger plot. But the fact that Callie is returning in the final episodes suggests that her character has always been important. The Duffers would not bring her back unless she had a crucial role to play. And what role could be more crucial than being 1/3 of the equation that defeats Vecna? Callie represents the number 8. She is a piece of the puzzle that has been missing for 3 seasons, and now, in the finale, she returns to complete the math. Will's powers were revealed in Season 5, Volume 1, and they are directly connected to Vecna. In the 4th episode, when Demogorgons are attacking the military base and everyone is about to die, Will taps into his connection to the hive mind and takes control of the creatures. He stops them mid-attack, lifts them into the air, and crushes them using the same psychic technique that Vecna uses to kill his victims. It is a shocking moment because up until that point, Will did not have powers. He was not like Eleven or Callie. He was just a normal kid with a psychic connection to the Upside Down. But now, we know that connection can be weaponized. Will can channel Vecna's abilities. He can access the same powers that one used to massacre the children at Hawkins' lab back in 1979. The Duffer Brothers explained in interviews that Will's powers are proximity-based. He can only use them when he is physically close to Vecna. The closer he gets, the stronger the connection, and the more of Vecna's power he can siphon off. This means that in the final battle, Will have to be right there next to Vecna. And that is exactly where he needs to be if he is going to combine his power with Eleven and Callie to deliver the critical hit. The narrative symmetry of this theory is beautiful. Eleven represents the hero, the protagonist who has been fighting since Season 1. Callie represents the outcast, the one who left and chose a different path, but still has the same origin as Eleven. Will represents the victim, the first person taken by Vecna, the boy who has suffered the most from the Upside Down's influence. Together, these 3 characters represent different aspects of the fight against evil: the warrior, the rebel, and the survivor. And when they join forces, they become unstoppable. The number 20 is not just a random result. It is the culmination of everything they have been through, everything they have learned, and everyone they have lost. It is the moment when all the pieces finally fit together and the heroes achieve the impossible. There is also a thematic reason why this theory works so well. Stranger Things has always been about the power of friendship and teamwork. The kids win in Season 1 because they work together. They defeat the Mind Flayer in Season 2 by combining their knowledge and skills. They stop the Russians in Season 3 through coordinated efforts across multiple locations. And in Season 4, even though they do not fully defeat Vecna, they come closer to winning because they are working as a team. The show has consistently reinforced the message that no one person can do this alone. Even Eleven, who is the most powerful character, cannot win by herself. She needs Mike, Dustin, Lucas, Will, Max, Steve, Nancy, Robin, Jonathan, Joyce, Hopper, and everyone else. They are stronger together than they are apart. So it would make perfect sense for the final victory to require Eleven, Callie, and Will to work together, to literally combine their powers into one unified force. It would be the ultimate expression of the show's central theme. The Duffer Brothers have also been very deliberate about how they structure their D&D references. In Season 4, during Eddie's Hellfire Club campaign, there is a moment where Erica Sinclair, Lucas's younger sister, joins the game as a substitute player. Erica is not a regular member of the club, but she knows how to play. And at a crucial moment in the campaign, when everything seems lost and the party is about to be defeated, Erica rolls the die. The tension is incredible. Everyone is watching. The fate of the campaign depends on this one roll, and Erica rolls a natural 20, a critical hit. The party wins the battle. Eddie is thrilled. The players celebrate. It is a moment of pure triumph, but it is also foreshadowing. The Duffers are showing us what a critical hit looks like. They are teaching the audience, especially viewers who do not play Dungeons & Dragons, what it means to roll a 20 and why it is so important. That scene exists to set up the expectation that when the real critical hit happens in the real world, when Eleven, Callie, and Will deliver their combined attack, the audience will understand the significance. They will recognize the moment. They will know that this is the natural 20 that saves the world. The timing of when we learned about Will's powers is also significant. The Duffers waited until Season 5 to reveal that Will can channel Vecna's abilities. They could have introduced this earlier. They could have given Will powers in Season 2 or Season 3 or Season 4, but they did not. They saved this reveal for the final season because it is the missing piece of the equation. For 4 seasons, fans have known about Eleven and Kali. We knew their numbers, we knew their abilities, but the math did not work. 11 plus 8 equals 19, which is 1 short of 20. The equation was incomplete. It was like the Duffers were holding back the final variable, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. And that moment came in Season 5, Volume 1, when Will unlocked his connection to One's powers. Suddenly, the equation is complete. 11 plus 8 plus 1 equals 20, the natural 20, the critical hit. Everything has been building toward this moment since the very first episode. It is also worth noting that the finale episode is titled The Right Side Up, which suggests a reversal or a correction. In Dungeons & Dragons, rolling a natural 20 can turn the tide of an entire battle. It can take a situation that seems hopeless and transform it into a victory. The Upside Down has been invading Hawkins, corrupting the town, and threatening to consume the entire world. Everything has been turned upside down. But if Eleven, Kali, and Will can deliver their critical hit, they can flip everything back. They can turn the upside down into the right side up. They can restore balance. They can win. The title of the episode is telling us what is going to happen. It is promising a reversal, a moment when everything gets flipped back to how it should be. And the natural 20 is the mechanism that makes that reversal possible. The Duffers have also confirmed in interviews that they have known the ending of Stranger Things since before they started filming Season 1. They had the entire story planned out from the beginning. They knew where it was going and how it would end. This means that every detail, every number, every D&D reference has been placed intentionally. When they decided to make Henry Creel number 1, they did it for a reason. When they introduced Kali as number 8 in Season 2, they did it for a reason. When they made Eleven the main character with the number 11, they did it for a reason. The numbers are not random. They are part of a mathematical equation that unlocks the ending. And fans have finally figured out the equation. 11 plus 8 plus 1 equals 20. The natural 20. The critical success. The moment when the heroes win. There are also smaller details that support this theory. In Season 4, when Vecna is revealed, Dustin specifically refers to him as the Mind Flayer's 5-star general. But in Dungeons & Dragons lore, Vecna is not a general. He is a godlike figure, one of the most powerful beings in the entire game. So why would Dustin call him a general instead of acknowledging his true power? Maybe because Dustin, who knows more about D&D than anyone else in the group, understands that Vecna is not the final challenge. The final challenge is rolling the natural 20. Defeating Vecna is not about overpowering him with brute force. It is about combining the right elements at the right time in the right way. It is about getting the math to work. And Dustin, the smart one, the strategist, might be the person who figures out that they need all 3 powered individuals working together to achieve the critical hit. The visual representation of the natural 20 could be spectacular. Imagine the scene. Eleven, Kali, and Will standing together in the Upside Down or in Vecna's mindscape. Vecna looming over them, massive and terrifying, certain that he has already won. And then Eleven reaches out her hand. Kali reaches out her hand. Will reaches out his hand, and their powers merge. Eleven's telekinesis provides the force. Kali's illusions confuse and disorient Vecna, making him vulnerable. Will's connection to the hive mind disrupts Vecna's control over his own power. The 3 abilities combine into one brilliant, devastating attack. And when the attack hits, it is not just a physical blow. It is a psychic explosion that destroys Vecna on every level: body, mind, and soul. It is the natural 20, the critical hit, the perfect strike that ends the war once and for all. The screen could even show a 20-sided die rolling across the ground, landing on the number 20, just to make the reference explicit. It would be a triumphant moment, a celebration of everything Stranger Things has been about: friendship, teamwork, courage, and the power of imagination. The math is too perfect to be a coincidence. The Duffers are meticulous storytellers who plant seeds seasons in advance and pay them off later. They do not waste details. They do not include things randomly. Everything means something. And the fact that 11, Kali, and Will's numbers add up to exactly 20 the most important number in Dungeons & Dragons, cannot be an accident. It is the solution. It is the answer to the question fans have been asking since Season 4 ended. How do you defeat someone as powerful as Vecna? How do you close the gates permanently? How do you save Hawkins and the world? You roll a natural 20. You combine the powers of 11, 8, and 1. You bring together the hero, the outcast, and the survivor. You work as a team. You trust each other. And you deliver the critical hit that ends the nightmare once and for all. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the theory of a possible Henry Creel redemption arc. For 4 seasons of Stranger Things, fans believed they knew exactly who the villain was. In Season 1, it was the Demogorgon. In Season 2, it was the Mind Flayer. In Season 3, it was the Mind Flayer again, this time in physical form. And in Season 4, the show revealed that all of it traced back to one person, Henry Creel, also known as Number 1, also known as Vecna. Henry was the first child with powers, the one who killed his family in 1959, the one who massacred the other children at Hawkins' lab in 1979, the one who opened the gates and terrorized Hawkins for years. He was evil incarnate, a monster who chose darkness over light, who rejected humanity and tried to destroy it. He was the villain. Case closed. Except the more we learn about Henry's past, the more complicated the story becomes. And now, with the release of the Broadway play Stranger Things: The First Shadow and the revelations in Season 5, Volume 1, a radical new theory has emerged. What if Henry Creel is not the villain? What if he is a victim? What if everything he has done, every horrible crime he has committed, was because something else was controlling him? And what if, in the final episodes of Stranger Things, Henry breaks free from that control and helps destroy the real villain, the Mind Flayer, the ancient entity that corrupted him when he was just a scared little boy? The foundation for this theory comes from The First Shadow, the official prequel stage play that premiered in London and is currently running on Broadway. This is not fan fiction. This is canon material, written with the involvement of Matt and Ross Duffer, the creators of Stranger Things. The play is set in 1959 and follows young Henry Creel as his family moves to Hawkins, Indiana. At the start of the play, Henry is not a monster. He is a normal kid. He is shy, awkward, interested in science and nature. He struggles to fit in at his new school. He does not have many friends. But he is not evil. He does not want to hurt anyone. He is just trying to survive adolescence and figure out who he is. The play shows us a version of Henry that we never saw in Season 4, a version before the darkness took over, a version that was still human. But then something happens that changes Henry's life forever. The play reveals that Henry discovers a cave near Hawkins. This cave is not a normal cave. It is connected to something otherworldly, something that should not exist in our dimension. When Henry enters the cave, he is accidentally transported to another place. Not the Upside Down as we know it, but a location that the play calls Dimension X. Dimension X is described as a barren wasteland, a place of floating rocks and endless emptiness. There is no life there, no vegetation, no structures, just nothingness. And in that nothingness, something is waiting. The Mind Flayer, the ancient entity that has existed for longer than anyone can comprehend. The thing that Dustin said in Season 2 does not even know its true home because it is so old. When young Henry is trapped in Dimension X, the Mind Flayer finds him, and it does something to him. It enters his mind. It corrupts him. It changes him on a fundamental level. The play makes it clear that Henry does not choose this. He does not ask for it. He does not want it, but he is powerless to stop it. The Mind Flayer gets inside him and never leaves. When Henry returns from Dimension X, he is different. He has powers now. He can move objects with his mind. He can read people's thoughts. He can hurt people without touching them. But these powers did not come from within Henry. They were given to him by the Mind Flayer. The First Shadow shows that the Mind Flayer used Henry as a vessel, a host body that it could manipulate and control from a distance. And under the Mind Flayer's influence, Henry begins to do terrible things. He has violent thoughts. He sees disturbing visions. He feels urges that are not his own. His parents notice that something is wrong with him. They are frightened by the changes in their son, but they do not understand what is happening. They do not realize that their child has been possessed by an entity from another dimension. They just think he is troubled, that he needs help. They contact Dr. Martin Brenner, who claims he can fix Henry. But Brenner does not want to help. He wants to study Henry. He wants to use him. The most important detail from The First Shadow is what happens on the night Henry's family dies. In Season 4, Vecna tells Nancy Wheeler that he killed his mother and sister because he wanted to. He says he chose to do it. He says it was his decision to eliminate the people who were holding him back. But the first shadow tells a different story. The play shows that on that night in 1959, Henry was not in control of his own actions. The Mind Flayer was in control. The Mind Flayer used Henry's body like a puppet, forcing him to attack his family. Henry's mother and sister died, and his father was severely injured. Henry himself fell into a coma from the psychic strain. When he woke up, he had no memory of what he had done. Or if he did remember, he remembered it like a nightmare, something that happened to him rather than something he chose. The Mind Flayer orchestrated the entire event. It wanted to isolate Henry. It wanted to destroy his connections to other people. It wanted to make him into a weapon. And it succeeded. This revelation completely reframes everything we thought we knew about Vecna. If Henry was corrupted by the Mind Flayer as a child, if he has been under its influence for over 60 years, then he is not the mastermind behind everything that has happened in Hawkins. He is a tool. He is a victim who became a villain because something evil took over his mind and never let go. This does not excuse the horrible things Henry has done. It does not make him innocent, but it does make him tragic. He never had a chance to be anything other than what the Mind Flayer made him. From the moment he stepped into that cave in 1959, his fate was sealed. And everything since then, the massacre at Hawkins' lab, the opening of the gates, the deaths of so many people, all of it was orchestrated by the Mind Flayer, using Henry as its puppet. Season 5, Volume 1 provides crucial evidence that supports this theory. In Episode 4, when Max is trapped in Vecna's mindscape and meets Holly Wheeler, she explores Henry's memories. These memories are presented as a physical space that Max can walk through, a maze made up of moments from Henry's past. And in this maze, there is a cave. The same cave from the first shadow. The cave where Henry was transported to Dimension X. The cave where the Mind Flayer corrupted him. Max notices something strange about this cave. When she backs toward it while talking to Holly, Vecna refuses to follow her. He stays outside. He will not go near it. And the way he looks at the cave, the fear in his voice, it is clear that this place terrifies him. Vecna, the all-powerful villain who has killed dozens of people and opened rifts between dimensions, is afraid of a cave. Why? Because that cave represents the moment he lost control of his own life. It represents the moment the Mind Flayer took over. Even now, decades later, Henry cannot bring himself to confront that memory. He cannot face what was done to him in that place. This scene is critical because it shows vulnerability in Vecna that we have never seen before. Throughout Season 4, Vecna presented himself as confident, powerful, in control. He acted like a god, reshaping reality according to his will. But when Max discovers the cave, when she sees Henry's reaction to it, she realizes something important. Vecna is not as strong as he pretends to be. He is still haunted by his past. He is still afraid of the thing that made him into a monster. And if he is afraid of it, then maybe it still has power over him. Maybe he is not the one in control at all. Maybe he has been following the Mind Flayer's orders this entire time, believing they are his own ideas, when in reality, he is still that scared little boy trapped in Dimension X, unable to break free from the entity that corrupted him. The parallel to Will Byers is impossible to ignore. Will was taken into the Upside Down in 1983 and exposed to the Mind Flayer's influence. He was possessed in Season 2, and even after the Mind Flayer was driven out of his body, Will remained connected to it. He could sense when it was near. He could feel its presence. The connection was permanent. But Will had something Henry did not. Will had friends. He had a mother who loved him. He had people who fought for him, who brought him back, who reminded him of who he really was. Will was able to resist the Mind Flayer's control because he had support. He had hope. He had love. Henry did not have any of that. His mother was terrified of him. His father blamed him for what happened. Dr. Brenner exploited him. No one tried to save Henry. No one fought for him. He was alone with the darkness inside him, and it consumed him completely. But the fact that Will was able to resist the Mind Flayer proves that it is possible. If Will can fight back, then maybe Henry can too. Maybe it is not too late for Henry to reclaim his autonomy and break free from the entity that has been controlling him for 60 years. This is where the redemption arc comes in. The theory suggests that in the final episodes of Season 5, Henry will have a moment of clarity. Maybe it happens when Eleven enters his mindscape to fight him. Maybe it happens when he sees Will, the boy who survived the same corruption that destroyed Henry's life. Maybe it happens when Max escapes from his mind palace and reaches the cave, forcing Henry to confront the source of his trauma. Whatever the trigger, something will cause Henry to remember who he was before the Mind Flayer took over. He will remember being a scared kid who just wanted to understand the world around him. He will remember the moment in the cave when everything went wrong, and he will realize that he has been a prisoner his entire life. The Mind Flayer has been using him. It has been feeding off his pain, his anger, his isolation. It turned him into Vecna not because Henry chose that path, but because it needed a powerful host to carry out its plans. And once Henry realizes this, he will have a choice. He can continue being the Mind Flayer's servant, or he can fight back. The redemption arc does not mean Henry would be forgiven for everything he has done. It does not mean he would get a happy ending or be welcomed back into society. He has killed too many people. He has caused too much suffering. Even if he was being controlled, even if he was a victim, the damage is done. But redemption is not about forgiveness. It is about making a choice to do the right thing, even when it is too late to undo the past. Henry's redemption would come in the form of helping Eleven, Will, and the others defeat the Mind Flayer. He would turn against the entity that destroyed his life and use whatever strength he has left to help destroy it. This would be his final act. Not heroism, but defiance. A refusal to be a puppet any longer. A decision to take back control, even if it costs him everything. There is precedent for this kind of redemption in the show. Bobby Hargrove was introduced in Season 2 as a villain. He was abusive toward Max, he was racist toward Lucas, he was violent and cruel. But in Season 3, we learned that Billy was also a victim. His father abused him. He grew up in a toxic, violent household. And when the Mind Flayer possessed him, it used his pain and anger against him. But in the final episode of Season 3, Billy broke free. He fought back against the Mind Flayer's control. He sacrificed himself to save Eleven and the others. It did not erase all the terrible things he had done, but it showed that even someone as damaged and broken as Billy could make a choice to be better in the end. Henry's arc could follow a similar pattern. He is more powerful than Billy. He has done far worse things. But if Billy could break free from the Mind Flayer's control for even a moment, then maybe Henry can too. The thematic resonance of a Henry redemption arc is powerful. Stranger Things has always been about fighting monsters, but it has also been about understanding that monsters are not born, they are made. The Demogorgon was not evil, it was just a predator following its instincts. The Mind Flayer is malevolent, but it is also ancient and alien, operating according to rules we do not understand. Even Vecna, the most human-looking villain the show has ever had, is not purely evil. He is a broken person who was never given the chance to heal. The show has consistently asked us to look deeper, to see the humanity in even the worst characters. And if Henry can be redeemed, if he can break free from the Mind Flayer and help stop it, it would reinforce the central message of the series, that no one is beyond hope. That even in the darkest places, there is still a spark of light. That people can change, even when it seems impossible. The logistics of how this redemption would work are still unclear. How exactly would Henry break free from the Mind Flayer's control? The cave seems to be the key. Max discovered that the cave is the one place Vecna cannot or will not enter. It is his blind spot, his weakness. If Eleven or Will or someone else can get Henry to confront what happened in that cave, if they can force him to relive the moment of his corruption, it might break the Mind Flayer's hold on him. Confronting trauma is often the first step toward healing, and for Henry, the trauma he needs to confront is the moment he was taken over by the Mind Flayer. If he can face that memory, if he can accept what was done to him and recognize that it was not his fault, then maybe he can separate his own consciousness from the Mind Flayer's influence. It would not be easy. It would require immense strength, but it is possible. There is also the question of what Henry would do after breaking free. Would he immediately help the heroes fight the Mind Flayer? Or would he need time to process what has happened to him? The theory suggests that Henry's redemption would come in the form of a single act. One moment where he turns against the Mind Flayer and uses his power to help Eleven, Will, and the others. Maybe he disrupts the Mind Flayer's control over the hive mind, giving Will the opening he needs to take over. Maybe he provides crucial information about the Mind Flayer's weaknesses. Maybe he sacrifices himself, using his connection to the Mind Flayer to create a vulnerability that Eleven can exploit. Whatever form it takes, Henry's contribution would be significant. He would not survive. Redemption arcs like this rarely end with the redeemed character living happily ever after. But he would die knowing that he fought back, that he reclaimed his humanity, even if only for a moment, that he was more than just the Mind Flayer's puppet. The emotional impact of a Henry redemption arc would be devastating in the best way. Imagine the scene. 11 standing before Vecna, ready to destroy him, but then something changes. Vecna's voice shifts. For just a moment, it is not Vecna speaking anymore. It is Henry, the real Henry, the boy who was lost 60 years ago. And he looks at 11, this girl who was also experimented on, also used as a weapon, also forced to do terrible things. And he says something like, "I am sorry. I am so sorry for what I did to you, for what I made you do. But you have to stop it. You have to stop the thing that did this to me. Do not let it win." And then Henry does something that no one expected. He helps. He weakens the Mind Flayer's control. He creates an opening. And in that opening, 11, Will, and Callie deliver the critical hit that destroys the Mind Flayer once and for all. Henry would die in the process. His body, already corrupted and twisted by years of serving the Mind Flayer, would not survive the separation. But his final act would be one of humanity, of choice, of redemption. The fan acceptance of this theory has been growing rapidly since the first Shadow premiered and since Volume 1 aired. Fans who saw the play came out of the theater with a completely different understanding of Henry's character. They saw him as a victim first and a villain second. And when Volume 1 showed the cave scene, when it showed Henry's fear and vulnerability, it confirmed what the play had revealed. Henry is not the ultimate villain. He is a tragic figure, a person whose life was stolen from him before it even began. The real villain is the Mind Flayer, the ancient entity that corrupts and controls and destroys. And if the show is building toward a confrontation between Henry and the Mind Flayer, if it is setting up a moment where Henry finally breaks free and fights back, then it would be one of the most powerful conclusions imaginable. It would show that even someone as far gone as Vecna can still make a choice, that free will matters, that redemption is always possible, even in the final moments. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.